Chapter 3461. Lian Jiufeng. Lian Jiufeng. Nie Tian's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he saw the man's face. He actually didn't notice that this guy was here. Boss. Jean de Bao saw Nie Tian's expression and immediately stepped forward. He said, "This guy came to find you. I told him to wait, but he insisted on coming." "It's fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly and looked at Lian Jiufeng. He asked directly, "Lian Jiufeng, what business do you have with me?" "Nie Tian, let's find a place to talk." Lian Jiufeng's eyes were murderous, and his expression was ugly. "What do you mean a place to talk? Can't we talk here?" Jean de Bao looked impatiently at Lian Jiufeng and shouted. With his current strength, he could kill Lian Jiufeng with a wave of his hand in Heaven Executioner City. However, Lian Jiufeng had come to find Nie Tian, so he didn't do anything. "Fatty, you guys go back first. I'll be back soon." Nie Tian waved his hand and said with a faint smile. Jean de Bao frowned. He knew that Nie Tian had something to do, so he didn't say anything. Jean de Bao and the others returned to Heaven Executioner City first. Nie Tian left with Lian Jiufeng. A while later, Nie Tian and Lian Jiufeng arrived at a secret place outside Heaven Executioner City. "Lian Jiufeng, what business do you have?" Nie Tian frowned. He could feel that Lian Jiufeng was a little panicked. "Lord Nether Emperor, something happened." Lian Jiufeng frowned and said, Nie Tian's eyes focused, and his expression changed. He hadn't thought that Lian Jiufeng would come to find him because something happened to the Nether Emperor. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian said in a low voice, "Make yourself clear." He did not care about the life or death of the Emperor of the Netherworld, but the relationship between the Emperor of the Netherworld and Cher was extraordinary. Moreover, only the Emperor of the Netherworld could restore Cher's sealed memories. Back then, after Nie Tian had helped the Emperor of the Netherworld to awaken, he had made a promise with the latter that 3 years later, Cher would use the tear of the princess to find the Emperor of the Netherworld. But now, if something happened to the Emperor of the Underworld, Cher might never recover her memory. Half a month ago, the Emperor of the Underworld was captured by a mysterious person. Lian Jiufeng's expression was dark and ugly. He said, 7 kills and I searched for half a month, and we finally found this at the place where Lord Emperor of the Underworld's aura disappeared. A black stone appeared in Lian Jiufeng's hand. It looked no different from an ordinary stone, but it was as black as night. It gave off an eerie feeling. The Netherworld Emperor was captured? Nie Tian's expression changed when he heard Lian Jiufeng's story. He had never imagined that things would turn out like this. The Emperor of the Netherworld was definitely a peak expert in the myriad realms. Moreover, he had merged with the demon hearts of the heavens, and he had made a breakthrough after his awakening. His current strength should be about the same as the boundless ghost Desolate. Just who could have captured the Emperor of the Netherworld? I've studied this black stone for a very long time, but I did not find anything strange about it. Lian Jiufeng frowned and handed the black stone to Nie Tian. Nie Tian accepted the black stone and frowned slightly. He probed it with his consciousness. Boom! However, in the next moment, an extremely powerful psychic attack was unleashed from within the black stone, causing Nie Tian's entire divine sense to tremble. In just an instant, beads of sweat appeared on Nie Tian's forehead. His entire body was drenched in cold sweat. Nie Tian. Lian Jiufeng's eyes focused when he saw this. His expression changed. Nie Tian withdrew his consciousness and inhaled sharply. His complexion was a little pale. It took him a long time to recover. In that instant, he had been attacked by a powerful mental attack. His consciousness had almost collapsed. "It's a mental barrier." The Ghost Emperor's voice rang out at this time. He couldn't help but exclaim, "A psychic ward?" Nie Tian was taken aback for a moment, and his face immediately darkened. His consciousness was connected to the eternal night foxes, so it was extremely resistant to mental attack. However, The mental attack from the black stone was so powerful that it had almost collapsed his consciousness. "Nie Tian, what did you discover?" Lien Jiufeng looked at Nie Tian. He didn't know what had happened, so he couldn't help but ask. "A mental attack." Nie Tian frowned and said solemnly. "A mental attack?" Lien Jiufeng was stunned. His expression darkened, and he said in shock, "I tried to sense the black stone earlier, but why didn't I feel a mental attack?" Nie Tian's eyes focused, and he said solemnly, "Because your mental power is not enough. The psychic boundary within the black stone would only release a psychic attack when it sensed a sufficiently strong psychic power. Lien Jiufeng's mental power was not strong enough. It was not enough to trigger a mental attack. Then what did you sense?" Lien Jiufeng frowned and asked solemnly. "I didn't sense anything." Nie Tian shook his head with an ugly expression. The mental barrier on the black stone was too powerful. He did not have enough strength to sense what was inside the black stone at all. Nie Tian was very confused. Just what was this black stone? Why did it have such a terrifying mental barrier? "Nie Tian, this black stone is definitely not from a realm." The Ghost Emperor's voice rang out at this time. "Not from a realm?" Nie Tian was stunned. Then, he thought of something, and his eyes trembled. He said, "Is this something left behind by a Saint World Martial practitioner?" "Yes." The Ghost Emperor nodded heavily. "The mental barrier inside this black stone is extremely powerful. There can't be such a terrifying barrier master in a realm." "You're saying that the person who captured the Netherworld Emperor is a Saint World Martial practitioner?" Nie Tian immediately reacted. His expression changed slightly, and he said solemnly, "It must be." The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, "This Emperor is guessing that this black stone is hiding a great secret." Nie Tian's expression was dark. He did not say anything for a long time. It seemed that the reason behind the Netherworld Emperor's capture was not simple. "Nie Tian, do you know something?" Lien Jiufeng couldn't help but ask when he saw Nie Tian's expression change again and again. "Lien Jiufeng, I think that the person who captured the Netherworld Emperor is someone from the Saint World." Nie Tian did not hide anything and said directly. "Someone from the Saint World?" Lien Jiufeng's eyes narrowed, and his expression changed. He said, "Why was the Netherworld Emperor captured by someone from the Saint World?" Nie Tian did not say anything. He only sighed and said, "It's not easy to save the Netherworld Emperor." Back when Heaven's Choice was at its end, Nie Tian encountered a Heaven's Choice venerable who looked exactly like Cher. This meant that Cher was related to someone from the Saint World. Similarly, it would not be strange if the Netherworld Emperor was related to someone from the Saint World. Chapter 3462. 3 days later. "What did you say?" Nie Tian's eyes shook when he heard Lien Jiufeng's words. He cried out in shock. "Lord Hell Emperor became a saint half a month ago," Lien Jiufeng said after a moment of hesitation. This was supposed to be the Hell Emperor's secret, but there was no need to hide it now. Nie Tian's pupils shrank in astonishment. Domain Ascension. He had never imagined that the Hell Emperor had become a saint in a realm. A cultivator who became a saint in a realm would resonate with the world. The disturbance could even pass through the realm and affect the surrounding saint worlds to a certain extent. It made sense if the Hell Emperor had been captured because he had become a saint in a realm and attracted the attention of the saint world. But if that was the case, he should have been recruited instead of being forced. He should have told Lien Jiufeng and Qi Sha about it. Nie Tian's eyes flashed with cold light. "Nie Tian, you seem to have the same aura as Lord Hell Emperor. Have you become a saint as well?" Lien Jiufeng looked at Nie Tian in surprise and asked. As a matter of fact, he had already sensed an unusual aura from Nie Tian, but he hadn't been able to confirm it. Now that he heard Nie Tian say that he had become a saint in a realm, he immediately realized what was going on. "Amen." Nie Tian nodded slightly and didn't say anything. Lien Jiufeng's eyes shook. He froze in place and couldn't say anything for a long time. He never dreamed that Nye Tian had become a saint in a realm. The reason why the Hell Emperor had been able to become a Saint Realm expert was because he had gained a deeper understanding of the heaven-punishing devil heart, and had absorbed more power from it. But why had Nye Tian become a saint in a realm? Was Nye Tian's talent really that great? Lian Jiufeng, if we want to save the Hell Emperor, we'll have to go to the Saint World, Nye Tian said solemnly, ignoring Lian Jiufeng's surprise. Amen. Lian Jiufeng was surprised for a moment, but he immediately reacted and nodded heavily. As long as he could save the Underworld Emperor, he was willing to go anywhere. Go find 7 kills. I still have some matters to attend to. We'll meet here in 3 days. Nye Tian looked at Lian Jiufeng and said directly. N. Lian Jiufeng actually bowed slightly to Nye Tian and said, Nye Tian, as long as you can save the Emperor of the Netherworld, I will definitely beg the Emperor of the Netherworld to restore Cher's memories and set Cher free. Nye Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything. The Emperor of the Underworld was not as simple as Lian Jiufeng thought. Lian Jiufeng left immediately after that. Nye Tian also left for Heaven Execution City. After a while, Nye Tian returned to Tianxing City and went straight to the main hall of the Myriad Domains Guild headquarters. Boss, you're back. Jean de Bao and the others were already waiting for Nye Tian outside the main hall. They were overjoyed to see Nye Tian appear. Nye Tian entered the main hall and had Jean de Bao and the others take a seat. Duanmu boy, haven't you always wanted to see boss? Hurry up. Jean de Bao smiled as he looked at Duanmu Lu and the others. Disciple Duanmu Lu greets teacher. Duanmu Lu seemed a little unfamiliar when he saw Nye Tian again. He took a step forward and knelt on the ground respectfully. Disciple Yang Zixiao greets teacher. Disciple Han Tian greets teacher. Disciple Peng Xiongfei greets teacher. Then, the others all knelt and showed great respect to Nye Tian. Get up. The corner of Nye Tian's mouth curled up. He smiled faintly and said, A martial artist's knees are like gold. We are master and disciple. When you were acknowledging me as your master, you already knelt. In the future, you don't have to kneel when you see me. Yes. Duanmu Lu and the others stood up, but they all lowered their heads. They didn't even dare to lift their heads to look at Nye Tian. The current Nye Tian was already too strong, far beyond their imagination. Duanmu, am I that scary? You don't even dare to lift your head to look at me. Nye Tian couldn't help but laugh bitterly and said half-jokingly. Disciple doesn't dare. Duanmu Lu was quite frightened and hurriedly said. Duanmu, you guys are too reserved. I am still the original Nye Tian. I am your teacher and also your friend. In front of me, you guys are the same as before. Nye Tian looked helpless. It seemed that his strength was too strong, and Duanmu Lu and the others were even more unfamiliar with him. Then, they chatted for a while, and the atmosphere eased a little. Over the next 2 days, Nye Tian stayed with Jean de Bao and the others and took care of some matters at the same time. He sent Bailey Xingxue to inform the Rakshasa Temple of the 10 directions that the remnants of the Juying Divine Palace would be taken care of. Nye Tian arranged for the Nye family to live in Heaven Execution City, where Jean de Bao was looking after them. It was the safest place. Nye Tian would soon leave the Realmverse. He was thinking about who to bring to the Holy World. At this time, in a small courtyard, 3 figures were sitting in a gazebo. These 3 figures were Nye Fenghua, Chiwu Yunxiu, and Nye Tian's family of 3. Ah! How can they suppress my Nye Fenghua's son? Nye Fenghua laughed heartily. Back then, Calamity 9 deities forced me to leave the 9 realms and sent Nye Tian to the Realmverse. So what now? My son has become a sage in the Realmverse, but what about Calamity 9 deities? She's already turned to dust. Nye Tian looked at the smug Nye Fenghua and couldn't help but shake his head. Father, Calamity 9 deities is in the past. There's no need to bring it up again. That's right. Chiwu Yunshio covered her mouth and laughed. Nye Tian killed Calamity 9 deities, not you. Why are you so smug? Nye Tian is my son. Isn't it only right for him to avenge his father? Why can't I be smug? Nye Fenghua raised an eyebrow. Didn't Nye Tian kill Calamity 9 deities because you were useless and couldn't kill him? Chiwu Yunshio's pretty face darkened. She looked like she was about to get angry. My dear wife, please calm down. I'm useless. I've caused you and Nye Tian to suffer. Nye Fenghua hurriedly apologized with a smile. Nye Tian smiled happily when he saw this. The past few days had been one of the few peaceful days of his life. However, it was a pity that such peace would soon be gone. Next, he would embark on a new journey. At this moment, Nye Tian became much more serious and asked in a deep voice, "Father, Mother, are you really not coming with me to the saints' world?" He had planned to bring Nye Fenghua and Chiwu Yunshio with him to the sacred realm this time, but the two of them didn't want to go. Nye Tian, the sacred realm is too dangerous. It's not suitable for old people like us. It's better for you to go alone. Nye Fenghua looked at Nye Tian and said with a smile. Nye Tian was speechless. Nye Fenghua was only a few tens of thousands of years old. She was considered very young among the godly state martial artists. Nye Tian, you should go to the sacred realm. We won't be going. Chiwu Yunshio also said with a smile. Nye Tian fell silent for a while before he finally nodded. Of course, he knew that Nye Fenghua and Chiwu Yunshio didn't want to go to the sacred realm because they didn't want to be a burden to him. Nye Tian didn't force them. After chatting with Nye Fenghua and Chiwu Yunshio for a while, he returned to his room. Nye Tian has lived a tough life. Chiwu Yunshio looked at Nye Tian's back as tears welled up in her eyes. She still remembered how Nye Tian would rather die than give up to save her. Although Nye Tian was powerful, he had never had peace in his life. Chapter 3463. Awakening of Lifeline. Nye Tian sat cross-legged in his room. He was leaving the Myriad Regions tomorrow. Today was his last day of cultivation in the Myriad Regions. He looked inside his body and checked his martial body. At this moment, his martial cultivation had reached the first level of heavenly rhythm. He was a true holy disciple. The increase in his martial cultivation had allowed his 9 extreme war god art to break through to the extreme fire scarlet heaven realm. His sword Tao realm had not broken through. It was still at the transcending god profundity realm. This was a rare situation where his sword Tao realm was weaker than his martial Tao realm. 1,000 of the 9,000 god-fiend powers in his body had been awakened. As for his 2 eyes, the demon eye and the god punishment rebel, the demon eye could release an extreme demon extermination seal after it was opened. Currently, the god punishment rebel could release a powerful eye power to break through his martial body and allow him to enter the godfiend body state. However, his greatest trump card, the 9 extreme chaos beast, had been sealed once again. What's more, ever since he had used the 9 extreme chaos beast the last time, it had returned to the primal chaos origin coffin, and the seal had become even stronger. Even if Nye Tian and the Ghost Tharch worked together, they would not be able to break the seal. In other words, even if Nye Tian wanted to use the 9 extreme chaos beast now, it would be impossible. At that moment, Nye Tian discovered something strange. His expression flickered, and he exclaimed, "The 3,900 karma points are gone?" He realized that the 3,509 mysterious karma that he had absorbed in the 9 mysterious blood spring had strangely disappeared. Back then, Nye Tian had killed the sectmaster of the 9 profound blood spring in 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 the 9 profound blood spring. He remembered very clearly that 3,509 mysterious karma had turned into runes and attached to his 9 energy meridians. Moreover, it was because he had absorbed 3,509 mysterious karma that Nie Tian had broken through to the 9th level pseudo-sage. After that, he had integrated the power of the 9 mysterious karma into his sword intent, making it even more terrifying. But at this moment, he saw that the runes formed from 3,900 karmic karma on the 9 meridians had disappeared. How is this possible? Nie Tian cried out in shock. He couldn't help but frown and his face froze. Strange. At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's voice sounded. He was also very confused. What's going on? Nie Tian was stunned for a long time. He carefully sensed the 9 vital meridians, but he still couldn't find 3,009 profound karma. It's the lifeline. Just as Nie Tian and the Ghost Emperor were feeling confused, Lulu suddenly let out a cry of surprise. He seemed extremely nervous and even a little excited. Lifeline. Nie Tian went blank for a moment, his face filled with astonishment. He had never heard of such a thing before. Lifeline. Could it be? At the same time, the Ghost Emperor's expression changed, and he was unable to say anything for a long time. Could it be what? Nie Tian was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. What exactly happened to make Lulu and the Ghost Emperor so surprised? Nie Tian, you've awakened the lifeline. After a long time, the Ghost Emperor finally calmed down and said in a deep voice. His eyes were burning with excitement. Lifeline? What's that? Nie Tian was flabbergasted once again. He had never heard of something like a lifeline. Nie Tian, do you remember the prince of the Fei Tian Azura tribe called Fei Tian Lang? The Ghost Emperor's lips curled into a strange smile as he suddenly asked. Not serious, Chun? Nie Tian couldn't help but furrow his brows when he heard this name. In the Azura tribe's ancestral ground, in the Saint Demon's secret realm, he met a cultivator who had one of the 9 heaven-defying fates, the Fei Tian Lang. And this person had once released a very strange power, the Fei Tian Lang's destiny. At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed as he exclaimed, Don't tell me it's my martial Tao fate? He remembered that the Ghost Emperor said that the life pattern was the power cultivated by the martial destiny and was extremely terrifying. At that time, Tang 13 almost died at the hands of Fei Tian Lang. Yes. The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, Nie Tian, your martial destiny has automatically awakened the lifeline. What do you mean? Nie Tian went blank for a moment, still very confused. Nie Tian, a martial artist, has 2 destiny. The martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path represent a martial artist's great talent. The Ghost Emperor said with a serious expression, All martial artists who have the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are extremely talented. However, not many people know that the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are actually a very special kind of bloodline power. Moreover, it is a bloodline power that is different from normal martial arts. Nie Tian's face was filled with confusion as he listened on. He could understand that the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path were the power of bloodline, but what did it mean when it was different from normal martial arts? Nie Tian, let me ask you, what is the foundation of a martial artist's cultivation? At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's eyes flickered with a strange light as he suddenly asked. The Yuan Meridian. Nie Tian answered without hesitation. The Yuan Meridian was the foundation of a martial artist's cultivation. It didn't matter if a martial artist was in the spirit realm, godly realm, or sage realm, as long as their Yuan Meridian was destroyed, their martial arts would be over. Just like Lu Mu in the Sky Sword technique, his Yuan Meridian was destroyed by the Heart of the Sky and he became a cripple. Very right, the foundation of a martial artist's cultivation is the Yuan Meridian. The Ghost Emperor nodded heavily, then he smiled strangely and said, However, the power of the martial destiny and the soul of the heavenly path are not restricted by the Yuan Meridian. They exist in a martial artist's body independently of the Yuan Meridian. This. Nie Tian frowned when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. He was stunned. He did not expect that there was a power of bloodline that did not rely on the Yuan Meridian. Nie Tian, your martial Dao Fate Providence is one of the 9 heaven-defying Fate Providence. It is an extremely powerful martial Dao Fate Providence. The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly and continued, I originally planned on telling you about the fate of the martial way after you entered the Saint's world. But now it seems like I have to tell you in advance. Nie Tian nodded. Yeah. Everything the Ghost Emperor had said made him more and more excited. Even if he did not understand it, he could tell that the lifeline the Ghost Emperor was talking about was an extremely powerful power. Nie Tian, not long ago, one of your cultivation meridians automatically awakened in your martial path. The Ghost Emperor nodded slightly and said, It was this lifeline that devoured 3009 Xian karma. Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. A lifeline could devour 3009 Xian karma? That was too terrifying. 3009 Xian karma was condensed from the blood qi of 30 million souls and the 9 Xian forbidden force. Its power was unimaginable. How could a lifeline devour 3009 Xian karma? Chapter 3464. 3459. Life Horoscope Cultivation. Upon hearing the Ghost Emperor's words, Nie Tian was dumbfounded. He couldn't believe it. At this moment the Ghost Emperor laughed, his eyes lighting up as he hastily said, Nie Tian, do you see if there's another dimension inside of you other than the one in your spiritual vein? Nie Tian forced himself to calm down and began to sense his martial physique. A while later, beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. At the same time, his expression became more and more shocked, until he was completely dumbfounded like a piece of wood. He had really discovered another space. Apart from the Yuan Meridian, there was another space in his martial physique. Nie Tian would never believe it if he had not verified it himself. Nie Tian, take a closer look at what's inside the Life Meridian space. The Ghost Emperor said proudly. Nie Tian finally calmed down after a while. He nodded slightly and continued to sense the new space in the Life Meridian. This is... After a moment, his eyes trembled, and he was stunned once more. He really saw something similar to a Yuan Meridian in the Life Meridian space. The white Life Meridian was like a tiny white snake floating in the Life Meridian space. Although it was not big, it was emitting a strong aura of life. Nie Tian, this is your Life Meridian. A moment later, the Ghost Emperor waited for Nie Tian to calm down before saying, The Life Meridian that awakened your martial horoscope. Nie Tian gulped down a mouthful of saliva. It took him a long time to calm down. He took a deep breath and sensed the white Life Meridian. As expected, he could sense the aura of the 9 mysterious karma in it. However, the aura of the 9 mysterious karma was very weak, as if it would disappear at any time. As the Ghost Emperor had said, the Life Meridian had devoured 3009 mysterious karma. It was as if the 3009 mysterious karma had become the nutrients for the Life Meridian. Nie Tian sucked in a breath of cold air, his face ghastly pale. This is way too terrifying. That was 3009 mysterious karma, but it was actually absorbed by such a small life vein. It was too shocking. What kind of terrifying power was contained in this lifeline? Nie Tian, the 3900 Xian karma was indeed absorbed by the Life Meridian, but most of the energy was used by the Life Meridian to open the Life Meridian space. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor seemed to see through Nie Tian's doubts. Ghost Emperor, when did this lifeline appear? Why did it appear? Nie Tian calmed down a little and asked with a trembling voice. Even you don't know, so how would I know? The Ghost Emperor laughed and asked Nie Tian. Nie Tian was taken aback and didn't know what to say. Generally speaking, the cultivation of a martial Dao life chart is extremely difficult. Even martial artists who cultivate a life formula rarely awaken their life meridians. Following that, the ghost Tharch became much more serious and said, "It's really rare for a martial Tao life providence to automatically awaken like you." The ghost Tharch really had no idea why Nye Tian would suddenly awaken his life meridian. If he really had to find a reason, it could only be that Nye Tian's martial Tao life providence was too powerful, so powerful that he could awaken it without cultivating. "Ghost Emperor, what use is this life meridian to me now?" Nye Tian asked calmly while sensing the aura of the life meridian. "Currently, it's useless." The ghost Tharch was startled for a moment before he replied with a smile. "It didn't work?" Nye Tian was taken aback and his eyes widened. "Absorbing 3009 mysterious karma to awaken a life meridian is useless? Isn't this a joke?" Originally, Nye Tian could still use the 3009 mysterious karma. However, after awakening the life meridian, the 3009 mysterious karma would be gone. Wouldn't that mean that his combat power would decrease instead of increasing? Then what do I need this life meridian for? Nye Tian frowned and his expression turned ugly. "Nye Tian, don't worry," the ghost Tharch said calmly. "The cultivation of martial Tao life providence has always been very difficult. It's great that you can awaken a life meridian. But the awakening of a life meridian is only the beginning of the cultivation of martial Tao life providence. It's equivalent to the awakening of a martial artist's Yuan meridian. However, a life meridian is different from a Yuan meridian. All martial artists, except for the extremely special ones, basically have 9 Yuan meridians. However, every martial artist who cultivates martial Tao life providence has a different number of life meridians. Generally speaking, the stronger the martial Tao life providence, the more life meridians you can awaken. Basically, a life meridian is useless to a martial artist in the early stages. However, in the later stages, the life meridian will become stronger and stronger. It will have a qualitative change to a martial artist's martial body, life force, and combat power. Just like that guy called Fei Tianlang. If he didn't have the non-heavenly fate pattern, his combat power would be at least half. Nye Tian's expression softened after hearing the ghost Thearcha's explanation. He then asked, "What are life patterns?" The cultivation of martial Tao life providence is also divided into realms. The first 3 realms are life meridian, life pattern, and life intent. The ghost Tharch smiled and said, "But you're still at the early stage of life meridian, so you don't need to care about life patterns." Nye Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. So life pattern was the realm above life meridian. No wonder Fei Tianlang's strength increased so much after using the life pattern. "I wonder when I'll be able to reach the realm of life patterns." The corners of Nye Tian's mouth curled up into a faint smile. "You should finish awakening your life meridians first." The ghost Tharch smiled and said. Nye Tian's eyes trembled and became extremely passionate. He asked, "Ghost Tharch, you just said that the stronger the martial Tao life providence, the more life meridians I can awaken. How many life meridians do you think I can awaken?" 9? 9? The ghost Tharch frowned and let out a strange cry. "Is that too many?" Nye Tian's face stiffened for a moment, then he laughed and said, "Then 6 it is." "Kid, do you know how many life meridians Prince Fei Tian, who has one of the 9 heaven-defying fate providence, has only awakened?" The ghost Tharch was speechless and asked in a cold tone. "Since it's one of the 9 heaven-defying fate providence, he should have awakened quite a few life meridians, right?" Nye Tian frowned and said with a dry smile. 2, the ghost emperor said coldly before he could finish his sentence. 2. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed and couldn't help but let out a strange cry. He didn't think that Fei Tianlang, who had the falsified fate providence, would only awaken 2 life meridians. "Nye Tian, it's already very late for you to awaken life meridians at your age. Also, life meridians awaken at the same time. You've only awakened 1 life meridian, and that's probably the only life meridian you've awakened." The ghost Tharch grinned and said, "Ugh." Nie Tian was stunned and couldn't speak for a long time. It seemed like he was too optimistic about his martial Tao life providence. One life meridian, the only one. After half a day, Nie Tian let out a wry smile. He sensed the space of his life meridians and suddenly discovered something. His face instantly froze. Chapter 3465. Nie Tian stared at one of the lifeline veins in the lifeline space. His expression changed and he exclaimed in shock, "How is this possible?" He simply couldn't believe his eyes. The lifeline in the lifeline space actually trembled for a moment and split into two. Furthermore, the two lifelines were exactly the same. It was like a duplication. One lifeline was duplicated into two lifelines. Didn't this mean that Nie Tian had two lifelines? Nie Tian, are you alright? Ghost Emperor noticed Nie Tian's strange expression and asked with a frown. He didn't pay attention to Nie Tian's lifeline space, so he didn't know what was going on. Ghost Emperor, Nie Tian's eyes flickered as he forced himself to calm down. He wanted to say something, but his eyes trembled again and he couldn't say anything. Because he saw that one of the two lifelines moved again, and then split into two. Once again, Nie Tian saw three lifelines. Three lifelines. It really was three lifelines. Nie Tian's eyes were blank. He felt his brain buzzing as if it was suddenly empty. He only remembered that Ghost Emperor said that Chen Chen, who had the non-heavenly fate, only had two lifelines. But now, he actually had three lifelines. Nie Tian, are you crazy? Ghost Emperor frowned when he saw Nie Tian in a daze and didn't speak for a long time. However, Nie Tian's eyes were staring at the three lifelines. The shock in his heart was getting greater and greater. He had a hunch that there might be more than three lifelines in his lifeline space. Following that, an even more shocking scene happened. One of the lifelines suddenly trembled a few times. Then, more lifelines appeared one after another. Nie Tian's face stiffened. His mouth was wide open as if he wanted to say something, but no sound came out. He saw that in the blink of an eye, 9 life veins had appeared in his life vein space. 9 lifelines. A total of 9 lifelines. Ghost Emperor frowned as he realized that something was wrong. He immediately looked at Nie Tian's lifeline space. In the next moment, his illusory face froze and was instantly petrified. He couldn't believe his eyes. What did he just see? 9 life meridians. 9 life meridians appeared in Nie Tian's life meridian space. Ghost Emperor was dumbfounded and couldn't react for a long time. Ghost Emperor, did I just see 9 lifelines? At this moment, Nie Tian finally calmed down a little. His voice trembled as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He felt like he was dreaming, as if everything was unreal. The Ghost Emperor finally came to his senses and nodded subconsciously. His eyes were still staring at the 9 life veins, as if he was afraid that they would disappear in the next moment. He didn't expect Nie Tian to awaken 9 lifelines. But how was that possible? Nie Tian's celestial demon forbid fate was indeed powerful, but it wasn't powerful enough to awaken 9 lifelines. Moreover, Nie Tian was already very old. It was already a miracle for him to awaken 1 lifeline at his age. Cultivators in the realms didn't know about martial path fate horoscopes and heavenly path soul horoscope. Only cultivators in the sacred world knew about these things. As for cultivators in the sacred world, as long as they cultivated martial path fate horoscopes and heavenly path soul horoscopes, they would start cultivating from a young age. The fact that Nie Tian had awakened 9 life meridians at the same time after he had broken through into the Saint Realm was simply too bizarre. Ghost Emperor had underestimated Nie Tian by guessing that he could only awaken 1 lifeline. Nie Tian pursed his lips and asked cautiously, "Ghost Emperor, I've awakened 9 life meridians. Among all the martial artists who cultivate the martial Tao, I should be considered very powerful, right?" Ghost Emperor nodded but didn't say anything. 9 lifelines wasn't just very powerful, it was infinitely powerful. Ghost Emperor had lived for millions of years. He had met countless cultivators who cultivated martial path fate horoscopes, but even the most talented cultivator had only awakened 3 lifelines. People like Nye Tian, who had awakened 9 life meridians, were extremely rare in this world. Even now, the Ghost Emperor still felt very illusory, as if everything was fake. 9 lifelines wasn't just heaven-defying, it was practically defying the gods, demons, and saints. Ghost Emperor vaguely felt that there was an even greater power hidden in Nye Tian's body. It was just that this power hadn't been revealed yet. Otherwise, Nye Tian wouldn't have been able to awaken 9 lifelines. Ghost Emperor, 9 lifelines should be my limit. I won't be able to awaken any more lifelines, right? Nye Tian said with a smile after sensing the space of his lifelines for a long time and seeing that his 9 lifelines had stabilized. Ghost Emperor had said that the awakening of lifelines usually happened at the same time. It was likely that Nye Tian wouldn't be able to awaken any more lifelines in the future. Kid, 9 lifelines isn't your limit. It's the limit of all cultivators I've seen. Ghost Emperor frowned. He wanted to come out and beat Nye Tian up. Since ancient times, no one has ever awakened 9 lifelines. Is that so? Nye Tian chuckled, the corners of his mouth curling up into a complacent smile. Ghost Emperor rolled his eyes. He calmed down and said, Nye Tian, what you need the most now is a fate chant to cultivate your lifelines. It would be a waste if you don't have a good one for your 9 lifelines. Life incantations? Nye Tian was taken aback. Fate chants are used to cultivate your lifelines, just like how martial skills are used to cultivate the martial path. Ghost Emperor explained briefly. Your lifelines are powerful and you've awakened 9 lifelines. You need a saint-ranked fate chant to cultivate it. Otherwise, it'll be hard for your lifelines to become stronger. Saint-ranked fate chant. Nye Tian frowned. He guessed that it was a high-ranked fate chant. However, he didn't know if it was easy to obtain a saint-ranked fate chant. There won't be any fate chant in the realm. Ghost Emperor shook his head. The best time to fuse your fate chant is within 9 days of awakening your lifelines. We need to head to the sacred world immediately to see if we can find a suitable fate chant. Yes. Nye Tian nodded. His eyes shone with passion. The awakening of 9 lifelines made him feel as though a whole new world had opened up to him. He still had a long way to go on the martial path. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor was lost in thought, a grim expression on his face. Nye Tian, what kind of power do you have inside of you? He thought that he had a good understanding of Nye Tian after living in Nye Tian's body for so long. However, he suddenly felt that there were still many secrets about Nye Tian that he had yet to understand. Why was there a 9th-level chaos beast in Nye Tian's body? Why could Nye Tian awaken 9 lifelines? Chapter 3466. Heart-devouring Blackstone. Ghost Emperor couldn't figure out what kind of power could make Nye Tian's fate so terrifying. There was no point in thinking too much about it. Once Nye Tian's fate reached the Destiny Realm, everything would be solved. Right now, what Nye Tian needed the most was a Saint-class fate art. If Nye Tian's martial Dao fate matured, it was impossible to imagine how great he would become in the future. A day later, Nye Tian stood outside Executioner City. Next to him were 4 of his disciples, Duanmu Lu, Yang Zixiao, Han Tian, and Peng Xiongfei. He planned to take all 4 of them with him on his trip to the Holy World. The 4 of them were very young and talented, so it wasn't too late for them to enter the Holy World. Their strength had increased by leaps and bounds after reaching the God realm. Duanmu Lu was a peak paramount god, and Yang Zixiao, Han Tian, and Han Tian were overgods. Their strength was heaven-defying among cultivators of the same age. The only reason why they were as strong as they were now was because of Nye Tian's help. Nye Tian had extracted a large amount of holy qi from the 9 supernaturals, and then personally helped Duanmu Lu and the others absorb it. That was how their strength had improved to such a level. Even so, they were far weaker than Nie Tian. Nie Tian planned to find a way to help Duanmu Lu and the others improve their strength after entering the Holy World. His disciples were talented, but since they were born in a realmverse, they needed to get stronger as quickly as possible. Only then could they compete with the geniuses of the Holy World. "Are we leaving now, Master?" Duanmu Lu looked at Executioner City reluctantly. His wife was in Executioner City, and he didn't know when she'd return. "Yes, let's go." Nie Tian nodded. He didn't want anyone to see him off so he wouldn't feel sad. After that, Nie Tian arrived at the place he had agreed to meet Lai Yin Jiufeng. Nie Tian. Soon, Lai Yin Jiufeng appeared. There was another figure beside him. It was 7 kills. "Let's go." Nie Tian didn't say anything else and prepared to set off immediately. However, at that moment, 7 kills was looking at Duanmu Lu and the others with a dark and cold expression as he asked, "Who are they?" "They're my disciples. They're entering the saint's world with us." Nie Tian frowned and said indifferently. "Together?" 7 kills' eyes suddenly turned cold. He said, "We're going to the saint's world. Why are we taking a few pieces of trash with us?" Right now, Lai Yin Jiufeng and Qi Sha were rank 9 pseudo-saint. It was only natural that they looked down on Duanmu Lu and the others. Boom. As soon as 7 kills finished speaking, Nie Tian took a step forward. His aura surged out madly and erupted with terrifying power, knocking 7 kills back several dozen meters. "Nie Tian, what is the meaning of this?" 7 kills barely managed to stabilize himself. His face was flushed red, and his eyes shone with cold, killing intent as he growled. He never thought that Nie Tian would dare to attack him directly. "Listen up, 7 kills." Nie Tian stared cold at 7 kills with a dark gaze. He said, "I'm the one who's taking you to the saint's world, and you're the one who's begging me. It's my business who I want to bring with me. It's not your place to interfere." "You." 7 kills' eyes trembled. He felt as if a boulder was pressing down on his chest, suffocating him. Before, he had heard from Lai Yin Jiufeng that Nie Tian had become a saint ruler, but he didn't believe it. But now, Nie Tian's aura alone was enough to make him lose his footing. The truth was right before him. He had no choice but to believe it. Moreover, Nie Tian's current forcefulness had exceeded his expectations. "Lai Yin Jiufeng, 7 kills, if you want to save the Onyx Emperor, then listen to me." Nie Tian's eyes were cold. He glanced at Lai Yin Jiufeng and 7 kills in a domineering manner. 7 kills' expression was dark. He wanted to say something, but Lai Yin Jiufeng stopped him. Lai Yin Jiufeng was a smart man. He knew that he could not fall out with Nie Tian right now. "Let's go." Nie Tian turned around and left without saying anything more. 7 kills was reluctant, but he could only hold it in. Afterwards, Nie Tian and the others did not enter the saint's world directly. Instead, they went to the Sky Kendo first. He knew nothing about the saint's world, so it was better to go to the Sky Kendo first and learn about it from Zhong Mingyu and the others. Half a day later, Nie Tian and the others appeared in the Sky Kendo. He did not waste any time and went to find Zhong Mingyu. Nie Tian. Zhong Mingyu was very happy to see Nie Tian again, but when he sensed Nie Tian's aura in the next moment, his face froze. "Nie Tian, you've become a sage," Zhong Mingyu said with a trembling voice after being stunned for a dozen or so seconds. He knew that Nie Tian was talented, but he had not imagined that Nie Tian was strong enough to become a sage. The Absolute Eagle King, who was next to Zhong Mingyu, had a frozen expression on his face. He was clearly shocked. Only now did Absolute Eagle King truly understand how talented Nie Tian was. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded with a smile and an indifferent expression. He did not hide anything and simply explained what had happened. "Teacher has appeared." Zhong Mingyu's eyes burned with excitement after hearing Nie Tian's story. Even he hadn't seen Forefather Divine Heaven for a long time. He really did not think that Forefather Divine Heaven would appear in the saint's world for Nyetian. Nyetian nodded and did not say anything. Nyetian, are these your friends? After a while, Zhong Mingyu calmed down and swept his gaze across Lai Yin Jiufeng and the others. Yes. Nyetian nodded and said, they will come with me to the saint's world. Zhong Mingyu frowned and couldn't help but look at 7 kills and Lai Yin Jiufeng a few more times. He felt a powerful darkness aura from them. Senior brother Zhong, I want to ask you about something. Nyetian did not waste words and said directly, yes. Zhong Mingyu nodded. Senior brother Zhong, do you recognize this? Nyetian took out the strange black stone that Lai Yin Jiufeng had given him and handed it to Zhong Mingyu. Zhong Mingyu's expression changed slightly as he accepted the black stone. After a moment of silence, he asked Nyetian, Nyetian, where did you get this? I have a friend who was kidnapped. This black stone was found at the place where he disappeared. Nyetian noticed the change in Zhong Mingyu's expression and frowned. He asked, Senior brother Zhong, do you recognize this black stone? Zhong Mingyu's expression darkened slightly. After a moment of silence, he did not answer Nyetian. Instead, he asked, is there anything special about your friend? Not long ago, he became a sage in the saint's world. Nyetian nodded. He felt that Zhong Mingyu should know about the black stone. A sage in the saint's world. Zhong Mingyu's eyes shook violently when he heard these words. A small realm had produced 2 sage realm cultivators at the same time. It was too terrifying. In fact, it wasn't just 2 people who had become sage realm, but 3. Other than Nyetian and the Emperor of Hell, there was also Nyetian and Mo Rushi's child, who had also become sage realm. Chapter 3467. Chapter 3462. Sacred World of 7 Cultivators, Heart-Devouring Blackstone. Nyetian's eyes trembled slightly when he heard Zhong Mingyu's words. Just by hearing this name, he could feel a strong dark aura. Then, Nyetian calmed down and said in a low voice, Senior Martial Brother Zhong, that captured friend of mine is very important to me. Please tell me everything you know. Zhong Mingyu frowned and shook his head. I don't know much about the heart-devouring blackstone. I only know that it belongs to a dark force. Moreover, that force is very mysterious and very few people have seen it. He stayed in the sky sword martial all year round and didn't know many things about the sacred world. Nyetian frowned and had a helpless expression. At this time, the Absolute Eagle King suddenly said, Lord Zhong, can I take a look at the heart-devouring blackstone? Zhong Mingyu glanced at the Absolute Eagle King and handed over the heart-devouring blackstone. It really is the heart-devouring blackstone. The Absolute Eagle King took the heart-devouring blackstone and sensed it. His eyes flashed with a strange light. Senior Absolute, you also know about the heart-devouring blackstone? Nyetian's eyes trembled and he looked at the Absolute Eagle King with a fiery gaze. The Absolute Eagle King had lived for a very long time and had experienced far more things than Zhong Mingyu. Perhaps he had a better understanding of the heart-devouring blackstone. A few years ago, I met a cultivator in the sacred world of 7 cultivators. He had a heart-devouring blackstone. The Absolute Eagle King's expression changed slightly and his eyes became strange. He seemed to remember something and said, At that time, I had a small conflict with him and almost died in his hands. Sacred World of 7 Cultivators. Nyetian's eyes trembled. He looked at the Absolute Eagle King and asked, Senior Absolute, there should be more than one sacred world in the sacred world, right? Although he had never been to a sacred world, he had heard of it several times. The one he heard the most was the sacred world. He felt that the sacred world should be a general term for sacred worlds, just like the myriad domains. Yes. The Absolute Eagle King nodded and said, The sacred world is the general term for all sacred worlds. Of course, there is more than one sacred world. The entire all-heaven sacred world is like the myriad regions. It's a sacred world system that contains countless sacred worlds. Furthermore, just like the plane worlds, the holy worlds are also divided into different levels. From low to high, they are elementary holy worlds, intermediate holy worlds, advanced holy worlds, and peak holy world. Generally speaking, a realm system is connected to multiple holy worlds at the same time, and the holy worlds that are connected to the realms are usually elementary holy worlds. The absolute Eagle King knew that Nye Tian was unfamiliar with the sacred world, so he gave him an introduction. Nye Tian nodded. This was basically the same as his previous guesses about the Saints' world. Like other planes and realms, the holy world was also divided into different levels. Senior Absolute, the Saints' world should be very big. How big is a basic Saints' world? Nye Tian asked the Absolute Eagle King. A holy world is much larger than a realm. Even a primary holy world is a few million miles wide. A primary holy world is even larger than a small realm system. Absolute Eagle King smiled faintly as he introduced it. So big. Nye Tian was surprised. He was quite shocked. He didn't expect the Saint's world to be so vast. A Saint world was actually comparable to a realm system. Then, Nye Tian continued to ask, Senior Absolute, what level is the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world? Absolute Eagle King nodded and said, the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world is a basic saint world, and it's connected to the myriad regions. And Nye Tian nodded slightly, and a blazing light surged in his eyes. Nye Tian, are you going to the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world? Zhong Mingyu frowned slightly when he saw Nye Tian's expression. And Nye Tian nodded and said, Senior Brother Zhong, that friend of mine is very important to me. I must go and save him. Since the heart-devouring black stone once appeared in the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world, I must go and take a look. Zhong Mingyu looked at Nye Tian and frowned. He paused for a moment before saying, Nye Tian, you can go to the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world, but your current identity is the master of the sky. You must go to the heavenly martial sacred world. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to the five major forces. Senior Brother Zhong, give me some time. Nye Tian's eyes slightly narrowed as he said in a heavy tone. Zhong Mingyu thought for a moment and said, Nye Tian, I will give you 1 year. After 1 year, no matter what happens, you must come to the heavenly martial sacred world to find me. Nye Tian nodded. 1 year was enough for him. Next, Zhong Mingyu and Nye Tian talked for a while and gave him a lot of sword crystals. Senior Brother Zhong, I will take my leave. Nye Tian no longer stayed and immediately prepared to go to the seventh cultivator of true virtue. And Zhong Mingyu nodded and then transmitted his voice to Nye Tian. Nye Tian, be careful of the 2 people behind you. Their auras are not right. I know. Nye Tian responded and smiled confidently. He naturally knew that the people Zhong Mingyu was talking about were Laiyan Jiufeng and Qi Sha. These 2 guys were not easy to deal with. Nye Tian did not trust them. Next, Nye Tian took out the space-time sacred formation scroll that Ancestor Sacred Heaven gave him and probed it with his divine sense. In an instant, he felt dozens of space-time points in the sacred world. They were all sacred worlds connected to the sword martial in the sky. Not long after, his divine sense locked onto the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world. With a thought, he directly opened the scroll. Boom! The moment the space-time scroll opened, a huge space-time aura was released. The surrounding void trembled and the power of heaven and earth changed. This space-time aura was very vast, but it was very gentle and did not have much impact on the surrounding space. Let's go. Nye Tian looked at Laiyan Jiufeng and the others and said lightly. Laiyan Jiufeng and Qi Sha glanced at each other and directly stepped into the space-time sacred formation. Nie Tian, Duanmulu, and the others also followed. Boom! Immediately after, the space-time sacred formation closed and the surrounding void trembled. Then, the entire formation disappeared. The figures of Nie Tian and the others also disappeared. Zhong Mingyu looked at the void in front of him and frowned, seemingly a little uneasy. Absolute Eagle King looked at Zhong Mingyu and asked nervously, Lord, will Lord Nie Tian and the others be fine in the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world? He originally thought that Zhong Mingyu would let him accompany Nie Tian and the others to the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world. Zhong Mingyu smiled bitterly and shook his head. We don't need to worry about Nie Tian. We should think about how to explain this to the five forces. Nie Tian had fused with the heart of the sky, but he did not go to the five forces. Zhong Mingyu had to think of a way to stabilize the five forces. At the same time, in the sky above the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world, several figures stood in the sky with surprised expressions. These figures were Nie Tian and the others. They had successfully arrived at the seventh cultivator of true virtue's sacred world through the space-time sacred formation scroll. Is this the sacred world? Duanmu Lu couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at the endless majestic mountain range below. The others were also shocked. Clearly, they were shocked by the vastness of the sacred world. The mountain range here was clearly much larger than the other realms. Moreover, the trees were more lush, the space-time was more stable, and the space here was more vast. The sky was high and the earth was boundless. Everyone could clearly feel the oppressive power coming from the surrounding void. Chapter 34:68. Chapter 34:63. Chapter 34:63 Manbao Plaza. After a while, everyone had calmed down. Duanmu Lu looked at Nie Tian and asked, Teacher, where are we going next? They had just arrived at the seventh cultivator of true cultivators and knew nothing about this place, so they couldn't help but panic. Nie Tian squinted his eyes and looked around. As far as the eye could see, it was actually a boundless mountain range. He had wanted to find a city and inquire about some things, but now it seemed that it was not as easy as he had imagined. It was at this moment Lian Jiufeng suddenly looked at Nie Tian and said cold, Nie Tian, return the heart-devouring blackstone to me. Nie Tian was surprised. He frowned and laughed. Lian Jiufeng, what do you mean? Nie Tian, since we've already come to the saint's world, there's no need for you to look for the underworld emperor. We can look for him ourselves, Qi Sha said cold as he looked at Nie Tian. You guys are afraid that if I bring them along, I'll drag you guys down, right? Nie Tian glanced at 7 kills and immediately responded with a faint smile. In the past, Qi Sha had been very hostile towards Duanmu Lu and the others. Now that they had just arrived in the saint's world, he wanted to part ways with Nie Tian and the others. Clearly, he was worried that Nie Tian would drag him down with 4 burdens. The two of you are far too unreasonable. Teacher has only just brought you to the saint's world, yet you're already leaving? Duanmu Lu could not stand it any longer, so he said coldly. Humph! Qi Sha sneered. He completely ignored Duanmu Lu and directly said to Nie Tian, Nie Tian, give us the heart-devouring blackrock. You've already done us a favor by bringing us to the saint's world. You! Duanmu Lu frowned. He wanted to say something but was stopped by Nie Tian. Here's the heart-devourer blackstone. Good luck. Nie Tian smiled faintly. He took out the heart-devourer blackstone and handed it to 7 kills. Since these two fellows were unwilling to go the same way as him, why should he force them? As for the Emperor of the Underworld, even without the heart-devouring black stone, Nie Tian could still find him. Nie Tian, goodbye. Qi Sha took the heart-devouring blackstone and sneered. He turned around and left. Nie Tian, good luck. Lian Jiufeng swept his gaze across Duanmu Lu and the others. He smiled wickedly and left. The two figures were like flowing lights, quickly disappearing into the horizon. 2 ingrates. Duanmu Lu frowned and cursed unwillingly. There's no need to bother with them. Nie Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. Lien Jiufeng and 7 Kills' departure actually made him feel a lot more relaxed. He wasn't counting on these two to find the Emperor of the Underworld. Moreover, before Lien Jiufeng and 7 Kills left, Nie Tian had already engraved their consciousness imprints into the 4 God Soul Stones. With his current senses, he would be able to sense Lien Jiufeng and 7 Kills if they appeared within 5,000 kilometers of him. At this moment, he had a premonition that perhaps it wouldn't be long before he would meet these two fellows. "Teacher, what do we do?" Duanmu Lu looked at Nie Tian with a troubled expression after he calmed down a little. "There are mountains all around us. Let's just pick a random direction and find the others first." Nie Tian smiled bitterly. He didn't know what to do next, so he could only walk aimlessly for now. Following that, the 5 of them randomly chose a direction and dashed away. About 3 days later, they finally walked out of the endless mountain range. By this time, the 5 of them were exhausted. At this moment, even Nie Tian felt a bit exhausted. Even he found it a little difficult to walk such a long distance. Meanwhile, Duanmu Lu and the others were already panting heavily. Their bodies swayed as if they were about to fall. They were only able to last until now because of Nie Tian's help. Nie Tian didn't let them enter the 9 extreme mountains. This kind of long journey could be considered a kind of cultivation. It was only now that Nie Tian truly understood just how vast the sacred world was. "Teacher, look, there's a city up ahead." Yang Zixiao seemed to notice something and pointed ahead. Nie Tian's eyes focused. He looked in the direction Yang Zixiao was pointing and saw a majestic city. The city looked extremely huge. It was larger than any city Nie Tian had seen in the realm. His initial estimates put the city at more than 5,000 kilometers in diameter. Such a large city was almost the size of a small realm. "Let's go over quickly," Han Tian said impatiently. "Okay." Nie Tian nodded. The wings of the astral soul on his back spread open. He brought Duanmu Lu and the others with him, and flew toward the city like a giant bird. Half a day later, Nie Tian and the others arrived in the sky outside the city. At this time, they could truly feel the vastness of the city. The city wall stretched outside the city. It was 10,000 meters tall and several hundred meters thick. The entire city was enveloped in a huge formation. It looked extremely sturdy, like a huge fortress. "What a magnificent city!" Nie Tian couldn't help but exclaim, his eyes flickering. It was hard to imagine how much manpower was needed to build such a city. Everything in the sacred world was more terrifying than Nie Tian had imagined. Then, the 5 of them landed and walked toward the city gate. The city gate was extremely majestic. It was like a huge mountain wall. There were 2 huge statues outside the city gate. They were 2 people, each holding something in their hands. They were exchanging something. "Million Treasures Mall." Nie Tian raised his head and looked at the top of the city gate. He was stunned when he saw the words engraved on it. "Million Treasures Mall." What did that mean? It seemed like the city was a place for trading. No wonder the 2 statues at the city gate seemed to be exchanging something. The Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. "I didn't expect it to be so prosperous after so many years," the Ghost Emperor suddenly said with a chuckle. "Ghost Emperor, do you know what this city is for?" Nie Tian asked after being stunned for a moment. "The Million Treasures Mall is opened by the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. It is one of the 2 largest chambers of commerce in the all-heaven sacred world. I was once a guest elder of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce for a period of time." The Ghost Emperor smiled faintly and said, "Let's go into the city first. If we're lucky, there might be a big auction, and we might even find a good fate chant." "Yes." Nie Tian's eyes lit up when he heard the word life incantation. It had been a few days since he awakened his fate meridian. If he still couldn't find a suitable fate chant, he would miss the best time to fuse his fate chant. Nie Tian quickened his pace and soon arrived at the city gate. Get out of the way! However, a crisp voice suddenly rang out in the air. It was sharp and carried a hint of nervousness. Eyebrows furrowed, Nie Tian jerked his head up and saw a huge crimson bird flying towards the city gate. On the crimson bird stood a girl in red. Her facial features were exquisite and beautiful. However, her pretty face was tense, and she seemed to be panicking. Chapter 3469. Chapter 3464. Battle the unreasonable girl, get out of the way, get out of the way! The red-robed girl screamed from the top of the crimson bird. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he frowned. Then, he stomped the ground and shot up into the sky. Awo! At that moment, the huge crimson bird seemed to be startled. It abruptly turned around and fixed its blazing eyes on Nie Tian. With a strange cry, it spat out a fireball from its beak, which shot towards Nie Tian like a fiery dragon. Nie Tian's face darkened. The starlight heaven slash appeared in his hand and he waved it in the air. A wave of sword chi gushed towards the fireball and dispersed it. But at this moment the crimson giant bird seemed to have gone mad. Its whole body released terrifying flames, like a divine phoenix in a raging inferno. Its wings suddenly flapped, and it actually crashed straight into a giant statue outside the city gate. Not good. Seeing this, Nie Tian's face suddenly darkened, and he had a bad feeling. The giant statue was protected by a powerful formation. If the crimson bird charged towards it, it would definitely trigger the formation's killing intent. The crimson bird would not be able to defend against a formation of that level. It would definitely be killed by the formation. In an instant, Nie Tian made a decision. A pair of astral soul wings appeared on his back. Like a ray of light, he flew towards the crimson bird. You! Seeing Nie Tian rushing over, the red-clothed girl's beautiful eyes trembled, and she couldn't help but cry out in alarm. At this moment, Nie Tian flew over her head and stretched out his hand. A powerful yet gentle force pulled her down from the crimson bird. Ah! The red-robed girl screamed. It was obvious that she was shocked. Boom! In the next moment, the giant scarlet bird charged straight towards the giant statue. Before it even touched the statue, it triggered the killing intent of the array formation. A huge array force surged out like a rolling wave, violently bombarding out. The giant scarlet-red bird didn't even have the time to let out a final shriek before it was killed by the power of the formation, leaving nothing behind. Boom! Immediately afterwards, the raging power of the spell formation rumbled towards Nie Tian and the red-robed girl. Huh! Nie Tian frowned. A crimson light gushed out from his body and enveloped the red-robed girl, forming a shield around her. This was his ultimate fire scarlet heaven armor. He used it to protect the red-robed girl. Then, Nie Tian retreated a few hundred meters in the air. But he was too late. Bang! In the blink of an eye, the raging power of the spell formation pressed down like a huge wave. A muffled sound rang out in the void, and Nie Tian's figure was directly sent flying, leaving a bloody trail in the air. Teacher! When Duanmu Lu and the others saw this scene, they finally reacted and exclaimed in unison. Nie Tian's figure stabilized in the air. There were a few wounds on his body that were so deep that his bones could be seen. Fresh blood gushed out and dyed his body red. He frowned. The 9 dragon veins in his body circulated rapidly, and his wounds gradually healed. After a long time, the wounds on his body finally healed, but his face was still pale. Nie Tian furrowed his brows as he looked down at the giant statue with a gloomy expression. It was too dangerous. If he had acted a little later, the red-robed girl and the crimson bird would have died under the force of the formation. The protective formation around the giant statue was too strong. Luckily, his martial body was strong. Otherwise, he would have been killed by the force of the formation. Xiao Hua! At that moment, the red-robed girl who had been in a daze for a long time finally reacted and burst into tears. Xiaohua was the crimson bird from before. The girl and Xiaohua had a good relationship. Xiaohua's death had almost caused her to break down. Nie Tian looked at the red-robed girl and frowned. He didn't say anything. At that moment, Duanmu Lu and the others came over and looked at Nie Tian nervously. "Master, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled faintly. His complexion had improved a lot. "Nie Tian, do you know how dangerous it was just now?" At that moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded. That formation was a rank 3 sacred formation. The power it released in an instant was enough to kill a heavenly mandate realm 9th tier Saint Master. So strong. Nie Tian frowned. He still had some lingering fear. "Luckily, you have 9 life veins. Otherwise, you would have been dead," the Ghost Emperor said coldly. Apparently, he was complaining that Nie Tian shouldn't have saved him so easily. "Fortunately, I'm fine." Nie Tian smiled bitterly and let out a long breath. He had just felt the terrifying impact of the array force. Fortunately, he was far away and had reacted in time. With the support of the 9 life meridians, his martial body was much stronger. Only then did he manage to save his life. "You bastard, you killed my Xiaohua! Give me back my Xiaohua!" At that moment, the red-robed girl suddenly looked at Nie Tian. Her eyes were full of tears as she shouted. Nie Tian frowned and his face darkened. He had saved the girl, but she didn't thank him. Instead, she blamed him for the death of the Crimson Bird. How unreasonable! "You're so unreasonable!" Without waiting for Nie Tian to speak, Han Tian, who was at the side, couldn't bear to watch any longer. With a cold glint in his eyes, he stared at the red-clothed girl and said, "Teacher saved you just now. It's fine if you don't thank him, but you're blaming him." "I didn't need him to save me," the red-robed girl shouted, tears streaming down her face. "He was the one who meddled in other people's business. Let's go." Nie Tian looked at the red-robed girl, but didn't say anything else. He turned and prepared to leave. The red-robed girl looked like she was in her teens. She was still a child, so there was no need to lower herself to her level. Although she was young, she was very strong. She was already a peak paramount god. Actually, that wasn't a big deal. After all, she was a warrior from the Holy World. Furthermore, the Crimson Bird was no ordinary flying beast. It was enough to show that the red-robed girl was no ordinary person. "You!" The red-robed girl roared when she saw that Nie Tian was ignoring her, but she didn't know what to say. "Who dares barge into Myriad Treasures Mall?" At this moment, a thunderous roar rang out from the city. 2 silhouettes rushed out like 2 wild beasts, causing the surrounding space to tremble. "Brat, you're courting death by barging into Myriad Treasures Mall." Upon seeing Nie Tian, the 2 figures simultaneously let out fierce roars and unleashed their auras as they simultaneously launched attack. 2 terrifying palm shadows shot out towards Nie Tian with a loud rumble. Nie Tian frowned and his expression flickered. The 2 men were wearing heavy armor. Clearly, they were the guards of Myriad Treasures Mall. They had obviously been alarmed by the commotion just now and thought that Nie Tian was trespassing. The 2 guards were 3rd-level Heavenly Rhythm Holy Disciples. As soon as they saw Nie Tian, they didn't say a word and attacked with all their strength. Clearly, they wanted to kill Nie Tian. "Teacher, be careful!" Duanmu Lu and the rest's expressions suddenly changed as they cried out in unison. Chapter 3470. Chapter 3465. Battle an inexplicable guard, boom. Nie Tian's body trembled and a surge of sword aura surged. The sword intent that erupted was like a volcanic eruption, violent and violent. Boom. In the next moment, Nie Tian struck out with his sword. A huge sword shadow rushed out like a mad dragon, causing the surrounding void to tremble. Kaboom! Then, the sword shadow descended. Not only did it block the 2 palm shadows, but it also knocked the 2 guards back 100 meters. The 2 guards steadied themselves and looked at Nie Tian in astonishment. They did not expect Nie Tian to be so powerful. Nie Tian looked very young, but he was already at the heavenly rhythm realm. His talent in martial arts was beyond imagination. At this moment, Nye Tian looked at the two guards with a gloomy expression and did not say a word. "Young man, who are you? Why did you break into the Million Treasure Mall?" At this moment, the two guards had obviously calmed down. One of them looked at Nye Tianling and asked coldly, but there was a hint of fear in his eyes. Previously, they thought that Nye Tian was just an ant. However, the powerful combat strength that Nye Tian displayed just now made them look at Nye Tian in a different light. For such a young martial artist to have such strength, there was a high possibility that he was a disciple of a famous family. Although the Million Treasure Mall was not afraid of any famous families, it was better not to provoke these young masters with some background. The one who broke into the Million Treasure Mall is not him, it's me. At this time, before Nye Tian could speak, the girl in red directly spoke. Her expression was much calmer, and she actually had a very arrogant attitude. She looked at the two guards and said, "Is there a problem? Whose family are you from? Why are you so arrogant?" The two guards looked at the girl in red and were stunned for a moment. Then, one of them sneered and asked, "My surname is Ning." The girl in red frowned and took out a token. She flashed it in front of the two guards and put it away. "Yes, it's young miss." The two guards were stunned for a moment before their expressions changed. They seemed to be very panicked and immediately bowed. They no longer had the arrogance from before and were now very respectful. They quickly said, "We have eyes but failed to see, we didn't know that the young miss had arrived. It's fine as long as you know who I am." The girl in red waved her hand and said, "It was just an accident. It's all right now. Let's go into the city." Of course, of course." One of the guards repeatedly agreed and said with a flattering expression, "Eldest miss is here for the auction, right? This lowly one will personally escort eldest miss to the auction." "No need." The girl in red had a cold expression on her face. She turned to look at Nye Tian and said, "It's enough for him to protect me." The two guards froze for a moment and looked suspiciously at Nye Tian. Only then did they realize that Nye Tian was their young Mrs. Guard. No wonder Nye Tian was so powerful at such a young age. He had a relationship with the young miss of the Million Treasure Merchant Guild. The Million Treasure Merchant Guild was one of the two largest merchant guilds in the universe. They had abundant resources. As the guard of the young miss, Nye Tian must have consumed a lot of cultivation resources. Nye Tian frowned after hearing the girl in red's words. This girl was not polite at all. She directly treated him as her guard. The red-robed girl looked at Nye Tian and said, "You've done well just now. I'll reward you handsomely in a moment." Nye Tian temporarily becoming this girl's guard is not bad. Nye Tian's expression darkened. He wanted to refuse, but the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly rang out. "Become her guard?" Nye Tian was taken aback, and couldn't help but feel somewhat speechless. He came here to familiarize himself with the sacred world and to find the life chant. He did not come here to be someone's guard. Nye Tian, this girl is a direct descendant of the Million Treasure Ning clan. You won't be at a disadvantage if you follow her. The Ghost Emperor chuckled and said proudly. The Million Treasure Merchant Guild's president's surname was Ning, so they were called the Million Treasure Ning clan. The token that the girl in red took out was the Ning clan's inner token. To be able to have the Ning clan's inner token meant that the girl in red had a high status in the Ning clan. Nye Tian had unintentionally saved the young miss of the Ning clan. This was a great opportunity for him. Nye Tian thought about it and did not say anything. "Boy, be my guard and I will not mistreat you." The girl in red could see that Nye Tian was a little unhappy and said. Nye Tian's lips twitched and he forced a smile. "My name is Ningxiu. You can call me Lady Z." Ningxiu's brows relaxed and she said with a smile. Nye Tian nodded and did not say anything. Then, Ningxiu brought Nye Tian and the rest into the Million Treasure Mall. Nye Tian was completely stunned by the scene in front of him after entering the city. On both sides of the extremely wide street, there were huge platforms with a radius of 1,000 meters. Every platform was filled with all kinds of goods. There were all kinds of divine weapons, divine pills, divine formation scrolls, divine herbs, and natural treasures. They were truly street goods. On some of the larger tables, one could even see sacred artifacts. There was a stall owner at the side of each counter, looking after the entire counter. Nie Tian looked at the scene in front of him, and could not react for a long time. He did not expect the sacred world to be so lively. Duanmu and the rest were even more shocked. They looked at both sides of the street and were speechless for a long time. Kids from the countryside, have you never seen the world? Ningxiu looked at Nie Tian and the rest and said unhappily. Ghost Emperor, is there a fate spell that I need here? Nie Tian ignored Ningxiu and asked the Ghost Emperor directly. The Ghost Emperor chuckled. Nie Tian, life incantations are the most precious things even in the holy world. You won't be able to find them in street stalls. Why don't you let this girl take you to the auction? There was no way that life incantations could be found in street stalls. Lady Z, let's go to the auction. Nie Tian nodded and looked at Ningxiu. He also wanted to see what the auction in the sacred world was like. Okay. Ningxiu agreed and walked towards the center of the city. Nie Tian, keep an eye on this girl. I'm afraid someone is going to harm her, the Ghost Emperor suddenly said to Nie Tian with a dark expression. Nie Tian was stunned. He did not know what the Ghost Emperor meant. This girl's flying mount is an extremely rare scarlet feather goose. It's extremely fast and gentle. It's impossible for it to lose control for no reason. The Ghost Emperor said with a dark gaze, I observed it just now. The reason why the scarlet feather goose suddenly lost control was because someone placed a curse on it. Chapter 3471. Chapter 3466. Chapter 3466. A man in black. Nie Tian's eyes trembled when he heard the Ghost Emperor's words. Yes. The Ghost Emperor nodded and said, the person who wants to kill her is most likely someone close to her. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as he realized what the Ghost Emperor meant. Ningxiu's scarlet goose suddenly went out of control because it was cursed. The only people who could come into contact with the scarlet goose were people close to her. Therefore, the person who wanted to kill Ningxiu was most likely someone close to her. If it wasn't for Nie Tian's timely intervention at the city gate, Ningxiu would have been dead. Little girl, it seems like the young mistress of Wanbao Mall isn't in a good situation, Nie Tian thought to himself as he glanced at Ningxiu. However, Ningxiu had recovered at this moment. Her face was calm as if she didn't sense the existence of danger at all. At this moment, Duanmu saw Nie Tian's strange expression and couldn't help but ask, Teacher, what's wrong? Duanmu, pay attention to the surroundings. Tell me immediately if you sense anything unusual. Nie Tian nodded and said in a deep voice. Although his divine sense was powerful, it was limited after all. It was always good to have one more person to stay alert. Yes. Duanmu nodded and became cautious. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived outside a magnificent building. It looked like a blooming lotus with layers of blooming layers. Moreover, it was emitting a golden light. It was very beautiful. The strangest thing was that those petal-like floors were actually floating in the void, giving off an incomparably mysterious feeling. The entire building was like a palace, extremely grand and gorgeous. Nie Tian and the others looked at the scene in front of them with trembling eyes. It was obvious that they were extremely shocked. They didn't expect a building to exist in such a way. Moreover, Nie Tian could clearly feel that the entire building was enveloped by a large formation. It was very sturdy. This is the auction. Let's go in. Ningxiu smiled faintly and walked in. When they arrived at the entrance, Ningxiu flashed a golden token and the guards immediately let them in. What a powerful barrier! In the instant he entered the auction house, Nie Tian immediately felt a strong spirit formation power. His expression couldn't help but change, and he cried out in his heart. He sensed that under the suppression of the boundary, his strength had dropped to early-stage low god. What kind of barrier is this? How can it be so terrifying? The sudden change caused his expression to change, and he was extremely shocked. The auction of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce does not allow any private battles. All the martial artists who enter the auction will have their strength suppressed to below the divine realm. Ningxiu saw Nie Tian's panic and said with a faint smile, "Below the immortal state?" Nie Tian was stunned and frowned. His strength seemed to have been suppressed to that of an early-stage low god. "Come with me." Ningxiu paid little attention to Nie Tian. She seemed very excited and headed straight for the top floor of the auction house. The entire auction house was divided into 7 floors. The higher the floor, the more precious the items were. Ningxiu obviously had no interest in wasting time on the lower floors. She headed straight for the upper floors. "Young miss, you're here." At this moment, a green-robed elder appeared. He came to Ningxiu's side, lowered his voice, and bowed. "You are?" Ningxiu looked at the green-robed elder. She didn't know him and was puzzled. "This old servant is the great deacon of this auction house, Yu Rushui." "Young miss, you can just call me Deacon Yu," the green-robed elder said with a faint smile and a bow. He appeared very respectful. Nie Tian looked at Yu Rushui and couldn't help but crease his brows. He stared at the latter and suddenly said, "Deacon Yu, how did you know that young miss has arrived?" Ningxiu should have come to Myriad Treasures Mall secretly. How did this person called Yu Rushui know? "That's right, Deacon Yu, how did you know that I've arrived?" Ningxiu frowned and asked the same question. "Ahem." Yu Rushui coughed dryly and seemed a little embarrassed. "Young miss, the guard at the gate of this mall is this old servant's nephew." "So it was that guard who told you?" Ningxiu reacted and said unhappily, "What a talkative servant." "Yes, yes, yes." Yu Rushui's eyes trembled and she nodded repeatedly. "Don't worry, young Mississippi. This old servant didn't tell anyone about your arrival." It was obvious that Ningxiu didn't want others to know that she had come to this auction. "At least you're sensible." Ningxiu's expression relaxed slightly. "We're going to the auction house on the 5th floor. Don't follow us and don't tell anyone about our whereabouts. Do you understand? If you dare reveal my whereabouts, I'll break your old bones." "Don't worry, young Mississippi. This old servant won't tell anyone." Yu Rushui smiled apologetically and nodded. "If there's nothing else, young miss, this old servant will take his leave. Go." Ningxiu waved her hand as if she didn't care at all. She had seen many servants like Yu Rushui who rushed to curry favor, so there was no need to pay attention to them. Nie Tian looked at Yu Rushui's back and thought to himself, this person shouldn't be the one who harmed Ningxiu. Just now, he had indeed suspected that Yu Rushui was the one who had secretly tried to kill Ningxiu. However, Yu Rushui's behavior had dispelled his suspicions. Yu Rushui looked like a smooth and slick person. If he had really done something to Ningxiu, he definitely wouldn't have taken the initiative to appear. Moreover, given his status, he didn't seem to have the right to do anything to Ningxiu. "Let's go." Ningxiu didn't know what Nie Tian was thinking. She smiled faintly and walked toward the auction house on the higher floor. A moment later, they arrived at the auction house on the 3rd floor. Ningxiu still didn't stop. She wanted to start from the auction house on the 5th floor. She wasn't interested in the auction houses on the lower floors. However, at that moment, Nie Tian suddenly felt a hidden killing intent appear, causing his face to darken. In the next moment, a black-robed figure appeared. It was a somber man with a murderous look on his face. He held a large black saber in his hand and walked straight toward Ningxiu. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed when he saw the black-robed man, and he walked over in a flash. In an instant, he stood between the black-robed man and Ningxiu. The black-robed man's figure flashed by, and his eyes swept across Nie Tian's body like a venomous wolf's. Nie Tian looked straight at him and didn't avoid his gaze. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. The black-robed man left as if nothing had happened. However, Nie Tian looked at his back with a pair of extremely gloomy eyes. In that instant, he had clearly sensed an extremely strong killing intent from the black-robed man. Chapter 3472. Chapter 3467. Killing, is this enough? Teacher, that guy just now had a strong killing intent. Duanmu Lu looked at the man in black and transmitted his voice to Nie Tian. Nie Tian nodded and did not say anything else. He was very sure that the man in black wanted to kill Ningxiu. Fortunately, he reacted in time and walked over. Otherwise, Ningxiu might have died in the man's hands without knowing it. The man in black was very good at hiding his killing intent, but when he was about to kill someone, the killing intent that burst out could not be concealed. Although the moment just now was very calm, it was a moment of life and death for Ningxiu. If it weren't for Nie Tian, this little girl would have died again. Who exactly was this man in black? How dare he assassinate the young mistress of the Myriad Treasure Guild at the auction? How insolent! Nie Tian, what are you guys doing? Ningxiu finally reacted and asked when she saw Nie Tian's gloomy expression. She already knew the names of Nie Tian and the others, and she also knew that Nie Tian and Duanmu Lu were master and disciple. She was very curious. How did Nie Tian become the teacher of so many people at such a young age? Nothing. Let's go. Nie Tian smiled faintly and decided to let Ningxiu continue to be ignorant. Given Ningxiu's current state, it was better not to let her know that someone wanted to kill her. Ningxiu agreed and led the way to the auction on the 5th floor. Nie Tian smiled faintly and curled his lips into a strange arc. He thought to himself, "You better not come near us again, or I won't be polite." The man in black did not make a move just now. It was obvious that he was afraid of Nie Tian. Nie Tian did not make a move either, but he had secretly engraved the aura of the man's spiritual body into the 4 spiritual stones. At this moment, he could no longer see the black-clothed man, but he could sense the latter's location through the 4 strange soul stones. After a while, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the auction house on the 5th floor. Ningxiu entered a VIP room with ease. They entered the VIP lounge one after another. The view was huge, and they could see the entire auction house on the 5th floor. Nie Tian, don't be nervous. We've already arrived at the auction house under 5th Brother's watch. I'm completely safe now. Seeing that Nie Tian and the others were a little nervous, Ningxiu couldn't help but laugh and say. Nie nodded and didn't say anything else. This ignorant little girl thought that she was absolutely safe after entering the auction house. Little did she know that after she entered the auction house, she was in even more danger. However, she had good taste and chose Nie Tian as her bodyguard. Let's see what's being auctioned now. Ningxiu smiled relaxedly, her beautiful eyes focused on the huge auction stage. Next, we'll be auctioning a rank 3 divine array scroll. At this moment, an old voice was heard. Then, an old man with white hair and beard walked onto the auction stage and announced loudly, "A rank 3 divine array scroll." The crowd below became agitated when they heard the white-haired old man's words. Even in the holy world, divine array scrolls were extremely rare, let alone a rank 3 divine array scroll. One should know that the power released by a rank 3 divine array scroll was enough to kill a heavenly mandate saint. This is a rank 3 sacred array, a spirit concentration scroll. It's especially suitable for martial artists who cultivate mind power. If you cultivate in the spirit concentration array, your mind power will increase at least 10 times faster. The white-haired old man continued to speak loudly. However, his words made the crowd's heart sink. So it's a scroll for cultivating mind power. What's the use of that? The crowd was in an uproar. Clearly, they didn't think much of the concentration scroll. Regardless of whether it was in the holy world, the realms, or the unavoidable worlds, warriors who cultivated mind power were always in the minority. Therefore, the market for concentration scrolls was not big. For the vast majority of warriors, concentration scrolls were useless. This was because cultivating mind power was a waste of time, and the improvement of mind power did not directly increase a warrior's combat strength. A strong mind power only enhanced a warrior's perception, or if they cultivated some mind martial techniques, they could launch mind attack. However, cultivating mind martial techniques was even more time-consuming. Therefore, very few warriors would waste time cultivating mind power. Hurry up and bid. Let's end this quickly. Before the white-haired old man finished speaking, someone below started to jeer. The white-haired old man looked at the people below and couldn't help but shake his head, but he still announced loudly, "The price for this concentration scroll is 100 supreme saint crystals." However, as soon as he finished speaking, the crowd below started to shout, 100 supreme saint crystals. That's too expensive. Why don't you just rob a bank? That's right. Isn't it just a scroll for cultivating mind power? It's useless. Who would spend 100 supreme saint crystals on a concentration scroll? Isn't that an idiot? Everyone looked impatient. They all thought that the white-haired old man had gone crazy. The white-haired old man frowned helplessly. Sure enough, these people didn't know the value of the concentration scroll. Tian, hurry up and buy this scroll. At this moment, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded from the VIP room. He seemed very excited. Really? Tian frowned. He couldn't help but be stunned. Of course. This is a rank 3 concentration scroll. It will greatly improve your mind power cultivation. The people below are all idiot. They don't know how precious the concentration scroll is. The Ghost Emperor said anxiously. Tian frowned and nodded slightly. However, he looked embarrassed. He had just arrived in the Holy World and could be said to have nothing. He didn't even know what 100 supreme saint crystals meant. Miss Z, is 100 supreme saint crystals very expensive? Tian's eyes darkened as he looked at Ningxiu. Have you only seen holy coins and not saint crystals? Ningxiu was stunned for a moment. Then, she smiled helplessly and said, Saint crystals are a big currency. It's normal that you haven't seen them. Let me tell you, 1 low-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 low-grade saint crystals. 1 mid-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 low-grade saint crystals. 1 high-grade saint crystal is equivalent to 10 mid-grade saint crystals. And 1 supreme saint crystal is equivalent to 10 high-grade saint crystals. So, 100 supreme saint crystals are equivalent to 100,000 low-grade saint crystals, which is equivalent to 1 billion holy coins. At this point, Ningxiu raised her brow and said, People like you who have only seen holy coins can't possibly understand the concept of 100 supreme saint crystals. It was obvious that she thought Tian was poor. I want to buy that scroll, Tian said with a plain tone, his eyebrows furrowed. What? Ningxiu was stunned. She thought she had heard wrong. I want to buy that scroll, Tian said again. Are you crazy? Ningxiu's beautiful eyes trembled as she shouted, Do you know how much 100 supreme saint crystals are? Even if I took out everything you have, I'm afraid you wouldn't be able to gather 1 supreme saint crystal. I don't have any saint crystals. Tian frowned. He looked straight at Ningxiu and asked, Can I use sword crystals? Sword crystals? Ningxiu was stunned. She asked in surprise, You have sword crystals? Apparently, she hadn't expected that Tian would have a sword crystal on him. Of course, Tian had sword crystals, and a lot of them. When he left the sword martial sky, Zhong Mingyu asked him to bring a lot of sword crystals. Are these enough? Tian took out a space ring. With a thought, dozens of sword crystals appeared and floated in the air. Suddenly, the entire VIP room was filled with a strong sword aura. Chapter 3473. Chapter 3468. Chapter 3468, That's Rich. Ningxiu looked at the dozens of sword crystals in front of her, her eyes trembling. She couldn't speak for a long time. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that Nie Tian actually possessed so many sword crystals. Most inconceivable to her was that all these sword crystals before her were actually top-grade sword crystals. Like saint crystals, sword crystals were also divided into low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, and supreme-grade. The only difference was that a low-rank sword crystal could be exchanged for 10 low-rank saint crystals. In other words, the dozens of sword crystals in Ye Tian's hands were equivalent to hundreds of saint crystals. Ningxiu stared blankly at Nye Tian. She couldn't figure out why he possessed so many top-grade sword crystals when he looked so poor. Nye Tian, you didn't steal these sword crystals, did you? After a long time, Ningxiu came to her senses and frowned. Are these sword crystals enough? Nye Tian frowned and asked in a deep voice, ignoring Ningxiu. Of course. Ningxiu nodded and explained the exchange rate between sword crystals and sacred crystals. In the all-heaven sacred world, sword crystals were the same as saint crystals. They were both currencies that could be used directly. Moreover, sword crystals were often more trusted than saint crystals. After all, this kind of thing could directly improve a swordsman's sword Dao realm. Yes. Nye Tian nodded slightly and was about to bid. Wait! Ningxiu called out to him at that moment. Nye Tian frowned and turned to look at Ningxiu. Ningxiu chuckled and said to Nye Tian in a somewhat mysterious tone, Wait a minute. Make your bid later. Nye Tian narrowed his eyes. He had no idea what Ningxiu was doing. This little girl is trying to help you save money. The Ghost Emperor laughed helplessly. Nye Tian's face was gloomy and he did not speak. At this moment, no one in the entire auction hall was bidding. These people don't even know the value of the spirit concentration scroll. The white-clothed old man's expression was very ugly, and he felt very helpless. Since no one was bidding, he still had a chance to lower the price. If it weren't for I's urgent need for saint crystals, I would never have sold the soul focus scroll. The white-robed old man complained in his heart, but after thinking about it for a moment, he still took the initiative to lower the price, shouting, Third-order Saint Array Focus Scroll, reduced to 60 top-grade Saint Crystals. 60 top-grade Saint Crystals. As soon as his voice fell, the crowd went into an uproar. No one had expected the white-robed old man to be so ruthless, practically cutting the price by half. Unfortunately, even though the price of the Soul Focus Scroll was reduced to 60 top-grade Saint Crystals, no one was interested in it. Forget it, a group of people who don't know what's good for them. The white-robed old man's face was extremely ugly. He sighed and was about to put away the Soul Concentration Scroll. 60 top-grade Saint Crystals was already the lowest price he could afford. If it was any lower, it would really be an insult to this Spirit Concentration Scroll. However, the white-robed old man had failed the auction. Not only did he not get a single cent, but he also had to pay the auction house a certain amount of fees. 60 top-grade Saint Crystals. Right at this moment, a sharp voice rang out from one of the VIP rooms, resounding across the entire audience. Oh! The white-robed old man's eyes couldn't help but tremble when he heard this voice, like a drowning man suddenly grabbing a life-saving straw. At the last moment, someone actually made a bid. This was a pleasant surprise that he hadn't expected. Moreover, the one who made the bid was a guest from a VIP room who seemed to be very rich. The one who made the bid at this moment was none other than Nye Tian. As soon as Nye Tian's voice fell, the audience burst into laughter. What kind of person is this? He actually spent 60 top-grade Saint Crystals to buy a soul cultivation scroll. Is his brain flooded with water? He's from a VIP room. At first glance, you can tell he's from an aristocratic family. He must have money to burn. He's rich, but he's too stupid, haha. The crowd rose one after another, looking at Nye Tian as if he was an idiot. The real idiots are you all, the white-haired old man frowned and thought to himself. He looked at the crowd with eyes full of contempt. 60 top-grade St. Crystals going once, 60 top-grade St. Crystals going twice, 60 top-grade St. Crystals. At this moment, the auctioneer began to call out. However, at this moment, another voice suddenly rang out. 100 top-grade St. Crystals. From one of the VIP rooms, a low voice rang out, resounding throughout the auction house with a hint of playfulness. The white-haired old man was stunned for a moment before he reacted. Immediately, the wrinkles on his old face trembled as he smiled widely. What's going on? The crowd below was also stunned. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. At the same time, in the VIP room, Nye Tian frowned with a gloomy expression. He didn't expect that at the last moment, someone would appear to compete with him. What surprised him even more was that there was a familiar aura in another VIP room. Through the 4 Wonder Soul stones, Nye Tian was sure that the cultivator in black who tried to harm Ningxiu just now was in another VIP room. Could it be that the cultivator in black was bidding against Nye Tian? Why is someone bidding again? Ningxiu was also stunned for a moment, her brow furrowed. She had asked Nye Tian not to bid so that the white-haired old man would take the initiative to lower the price, but she didn't expect that it would attract another bidder. 120 top-grade St. Crystals. At this moment, Nye Tian didn't hesitate much and bid again. This time, he directly raised the price to top-grade St. Crystals. Just now, he took out 45 top-grade sword crystals, which was equivalent to 450 top-grade St. Crystals, so he didn't panic at all. How generous! Ningxiu looked at Nye Tian and said with her small mouth, "He's really rich." The people in the auction house also exclaimed, and they couldn't help but look at VIP room 5 where Nye Tian and the others were. 160 top-grade St. Crystals. However, at this moment, the cultivator in black from VIP room 8 made another bid, and this time, his bid was even more ferocious than Nye Tian's. 200 top-grade St. Crystals. Nye Tian frowned, but he didn't hesitate and continued bidding. He had plenty of sword crystals on him, so he didn't care at all. 200 top-grade St. Crystals to buy a soul focus scroll? Are you crazy? Ningxiu suddenly looked at Nye Tian, her beautiful eyes trembling as she shouted in shock. 260 top-grade St. Crystals. However, at this moment, another bid came from VIP room 8. Nye Tian frowned and his face sank slightly. Nye Tian, stop shouting. Ningxiu's beautiful eyes trembled, and she hurriedly said to Nye Tian, "If you need a soul focus scroll, this young lady will ask the deacon just now to help you find one. I guarantee that it will be better than this scroll, and it will definitely be cheaper." Nye Tian glanced at Ningxiu, shook his head slightly, and smiled. He didn't expect the young lady of Myriad Treasures Chamber of Commerce to be so stingy. 400 top-grade St. Crystals. Then, he calmly said. His faint voice resounded throughout the auction house, but it was like a clap of thunder, surging in everyone's ears. Chapter 3474. A strange auction. The entire auction house was dead silent. It took a long time for everyone to react, but they all stared at VIP room 5, speechless. A soul focus scroll had actually raised the price to 400 top-grade St. Crystals. This bidder was simply a madman. On the auction stage, the white-haired old man was stunned for a long time. When he finally reacted, he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Even he didn't expect that the focus scroll would be offered for 400 top-grade St. Crystals. Nye Tian, what are you doing? At the same time, in VIP room 5, Ningxiu reacted. Her eyes trembled as she shouted at Nye Tian. "I have plenty of sword crystals. I don't care about a few dozen." Nye Tian smiled faintly, his face calm. When he left the Sky Sword Martial School, Zhong Mingyu gave him 1,000 top-grade sword crystals. He didn't care much about it at that time, but he didn't expect the value of these sword crystals to be so high. The focus scroll only cost 40 top-grade sword crystals. He didn't care much about it. Ningxiu's pretty face stiffened and she was speechless. At this moment, she realized that Nie Tian, who looked like a poor and old-fashioned man, was actually a super-rich man. After a while, there was no sound from VIP Room 8. Nie Tian successfully won the focus scroll. Soon, someone from the auction house brought the focus scroll over. Nie Tian paid 44 top-grade sword crystals. 40 of them were for the focus scroll, and the other 4 were for the auction house's auction fee. He had to admit that the auction was really shady. They actually took 10% of the auction fee. He really didn't know how terrifying the auction house's profits would be after today's auction. Nie Tian checked the focus scroll, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, he put it away. Then, the auction continued. However, Nie Tian wasn't interested in the next few auction items. Ningxiu didn't say anything either. She seemed to be waiting for something. Miss Z, have you heard of the heart-devouring black stone? At this moment, Nie Tian suddenly looked at Ningxiu and couldn't help but ask. Heart-devouring black stone? What was that? Is it some kind of holy stone? Ningxiu was stunned for a moment, her beautiful eyes twinkling as she asked. Nothing. Nie Tian smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. After all, Ningxiu was just a teenage girl. It was normal for her to not have heard of the heart-devouring blackstone. Nie Tian was just asking casually. Do you want to buy the heart-devouring blackstone? Ningxiu looked at Nie Tian and said with a smile, that deacon named Yu Rushui must know. Nie Tian's eyes flickered when he heard Ningxiu's words. Yu Rushui was the grand steward of this auction house, and had seen countless things in her life. Perhaps she really did know about the heart-devouring blackstone. I need a piece of heart-devouring blackstone. Nie Tian nodded with a smile. He hadn't thought of this earlier. He could directly request to the auction house to buy the heart-devouring blackstone and then use it as a clue to find the person who sold it. Perhaps he would be able to discover something. Following that, Nie Tian and the rest sat on the 5th floor for half a day. When they really didn't see anything they were interested in, they left immediately. They skipped the 6th floor and went to the 7th floor. The auction house on the 7th floor was bigger than the auction house on the 5th floor. However, there were fewer people here. After all, the items auctioned on the 7th floor were even more expensive, and not everyone could afford them. The auction house on the 7th floor was the highest place in the entire auction house. Only the most precious items were auctioned here. Nie Tian and the rest went straight to VIP room 5 on the 7th floor and waited quietly for the auction to begin. A moment later, an old man in a green robe walked onto the auction stage. It was none other than the auction house's grand steward, Yu Rushui. Nie Tian frowned when he saw Yu Rushui. He was surprised. As the auction house's grand steward, Yu Rushui had personally auctioned an item. It was definitely not an ordinary item. Nie Tian was very curious about the next item to be auctioned. Ladies and gentlemen, the next item we are auctioning is a very rare item. At this moment, Yu Rushui's voice sounded. This item is worthless to those who don't need it, but it is a priceless treasure to those who need it. What is that? The crowd's curiosity was piqued by Yu Rushui, and they couldn't help but start discussing. Ladies and gentlemen, the auction for this item is different from usual. The owner of the item not only set a minimum price, but also a maximum price. Yu Rushui then said in a clear voice, the starting price of this item is 500 top-grade Saint crystals, and the final maximum price is 2,000 top-grade Saint crystals. Maximum price? Everyone was stunned when they heard what Yu Rushui said. They were puzzled. In auctions, there was always a starting price. How could there be a maximum price? Anyone who auctioned an item would certainly hope that the price of their item was as high as possible. Who knew what the person who set a maximum price for an item was thinking? However, the owner of the item said that if anyone offers a price higher than the maximum price, they must meet with him. If the owner of the item is not satisfied with the bidder, this item will not be sold, Yu Rushui continued. As soon as his words fell, it was like a stone that stirred up 1,000 ripples. What kind of rule is this? How can he not sell it after offering the highest price? Is this person crazy? I think this person is purely here to cause trouble. I really don't know why the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce is auctioning this person's item. The crowd was in an uproar as they discussed. They were all people who had experienced countless auctions, but this was the first time they had seen such a strange auction method. Ladies and gentlemen, please be quiet. At this moment, Yu Rushui waved her hand and said, "If you don't accept this sir's auction method, you don't have to bid at all. Just treat it as a good show." Although she said that, Yu Rushui was secretly laughing in her heart. When this item comes out, you will definitely fight to the death for it. The crowd was puzzled, and their voices gradually became softer. Then, a lady in pink with a voluptuous figure walked over with a plate in her hand. On it was an ancient scroll. Is that the scroll? Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the ancient scroll. Their expressions could not help but become heated. Everyone wanted to know what kind of scroll it was to be auctioned in such a strange way. Everyone, be careful. At this moment, Yu Rushui stepped forward and reached out to take the scroll. She actually opened it. Boom! Suddenly, a boundless energy was released. In an instant, it filled the entire auction hall on the 7th floor. At this moment, everyone felt their yuan meridians tremble as if they had been struck by lightning. Chapter 3475. Chapter 1470. Saint Rank Life Technique. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at the scroll in shock. It was hard to imagine what kind of power was contained in the scroll for it to be so terrifying. At this moment, Yu Rushui suddenly closed the scroll and looked at the crowd with a smile. "Everyone, did you feel the power just now?" Yes. Everyone nodded their heads in a daze. Obviously, they wanted to know what kind of scroll it was to be able to release such a powerful force. "It's a life technique scroll." Yu Rushui's eyes swept across the crowd as her lips curled into a faint smile. "Furthermore, it's an advanced Saint Rank life technique." Life technique. Everyone's eyes trembled when they heard these two words, their expressions filled with shock. No wonder the power contained in the scroll was so powerful. It turned out to be the legendary life technique scroll. Everyone present was a powerful cultivator, so of course they knew what a life technique scroll was. A life technique was used to cultivate one's martial Dao fate. Even the lowest grade life technique was extremely expensive. This was because those who could cultivate a martial Dao fate were all monstrous geniuses, and most of these people had powerful background. Everyone, this advanced Saint Rank life technique scroll starts at 500 supreme grade Saint crystals. Do you think it's expensive? Yu Rushui smiled faintly and asked loudly. It's not expensive. Everyone responded in unison, as if they were fanatical. Life techniques were divided into Spirit, Divine, and Saint rank. Each rank was further divided into primary, intermediate, and advanced. It was no exaggeration to say that a Spirit rank life technique scroll could sometimes be sold for 500 supreme grade Saint crystals. As for the highest grade advanced Saint rank life technique scroll, it was simply a priceless treasure. Those great families and sects might even pay any price to obtain an advanced Saint rank martial technique scroll. It could be said that this advanced Saint rank life technique scroll had a starting price of 500 supreme grade Saint crystals and an upper limit of 2,000 supreme grade Saint crystals. It was practically a free gift. An advanced Saint rank life technique, if taken to a family or sect, could be exchanged for hundreds of thousands or even millions of top-grade Saint crystals. I offer 2,000 supreme grade Saint crystals. I offer 2,000 supreme grade Saint crystals too. Me too. I'm willing to pay 20,000 top-grade Saint crystals. In the next moment, everyone suddenly reacted. Without waiting for Yu Rushui to announce the start of the auction, they began to bid wildly. Some people even raised the price by 10 times. Everyone, please be quiet. Yu Rushui had already anticipated this situation. She smiled faintly and motioned for everyone to be quiet. Thank you for your enthusiasm, but I'm sorry, but not everyone here is qualified to bid. What do you mean? Everyone's eyes widened in shock. That lord said that only martial artists who have awakened their lifelines are qualified to bid. Yu Rushui smiled faintly and said, therefore, if you haven't awakened your lifeline, please don't bid. This. Everyone was taken aback, and most of them had ugly expressions on their faces. The lifeline was not something that could be awakened easily. There were many people with a martial Tao life providence, but very few people could awaken a life meridian. Among all the martial artists who had a martial Tao fate, less than 1 in 100 could awaken their fate meridians. Then, everyone was in a mess and began to shout and shout. What kind of condition is this? Isn't this bullying? That's right. I haven't awakened a life meridian, but I know someone who has. If I haven't awakened a life meridian, doesn't that mean I don't have a life skill? Give me the life skill and I can awaken a life meridian. The crowd shouted loudly, and the scene was about to become chaotic. Everyone, please be quiet. Yu Rushui growled. Her voice was like thunder, resounding throughout the entire auction house. Suddenly, the entire place quietened down. The rules of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce were as firm as iron, and no one dared to behave atrociously here. Everyone, this is the Lord's condition. As the entrusted party, the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce can only abide by it. Please forgive us. Yu Rushui nodded and smiled when she saw that everyone had calmed down. Everyone immediately sighed, but there was nothing they could do. Everyone, the auction begins now. Those who have awakened a life meridian and are interested in the life skill, please bid. Yu Rushui smiled faintly and announced the start of the auction. This time, the entire auction house fell silent. There were many powerful people present, but there were very few who had awakened a life meridian. Moreover, everyone present was smart. Since the person behind the life skill dared to make these conditions, it meant that this person's strength and status were very high. Otherwise, the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce would not have accepted so many harsh conditions. 2,000 top-grade Saint Crystals. After a long time, a low voice sounded from VIP Room 8. It was the first person to bid. At the same time, in VIP Room 5, Nie Tian frowned as he thought to himself in surprise, "It's that guy again." At this moment, he sensed that the person sitting in VIP Room 8 was the black-robed cultivator again. He did not expect that guy to come to the auction house on the 7th floor. At this point, the Ghost Emperor couldn't hold back any longer, and called out to Nie Tian, "Nie Tian, make a bid." When the Saint Grade life skill first appeared, Ghost Emperor was very excited and could not wait to get his hands on the life skill. On the other hand, Nie Tian was very calm. Nie Tian nodded and shouted, 2,000 top-grade Saint Crystals. Everyone in the auction house was stunned when they heard these two voices. They did not expect that there would be two cultivators with awakened life meridians on the 7th floor. 2,000 top-grade Saint Crystals. 2,000 top-grade Saint Crystals. At this moment, two more voices sounded almost at the same time. Two more people. The crowd could not help but exclaim. There were only a few thousand people on the 7th floor, but there were 4 cultivators with awakened life meridians. Was this really possible? But at this moment, weren't the people who dared to bid those who had awakened their life meridians? Then, the entire auction house was dead silent for a long time. Good. Since no one is bidding, we'll stop here. Yu Rushui glanced at the crowd and smiled faintly. Then, she said loudly, "Next, please come to VIP Room 9. VIP Room 9. The crowd's eyes trembled as they looked at VIP Room 9. It turned out that the owner of the Saint Grade life skill was in VIP Room 9. At the same time, in VIP room 5. Nye Tian, did you really awaken your life meridians? Ningxiu's little face was a little stiff as she looked at Nye Tian with uncertainty and asked in shock. Yes. Nye Tian nodded calmly. Let me tell you, this is the auction house of the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce. If you break the rules, you'll be in big trouble. Even I won't be able to protect you, Ningxiu said nervously in disbelief. It was obvious that she did not believe that Nye Tian had awakened his life meridians. Only those who had awakened their life meridians were qualified to bid for this auction. If Nye Tian did not awaken his life meridians but still participated in the auction, it would be against the rules of the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 3476. What about me? Nye Tian, if you haven't awakened your lifeline, it's not too late to back out now. I'll talk to Attendant Yu and she'll protect you, Ningxiu said anxiously, still not trusting Nye Tian. Miss Z, trust me. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said confidently. He knew that Ningxiu was doing this for his own good, but she was underestimating him too much. All right. Ningxiu could feel the confidence in Nye Tian's eyes. Her eyes flickered and she finally nodded her head. Then, Nye Tian and the others left VIP room 5 and arrived outside VIP room 9. First young mistress. Urushui couldn't help but cry out in shock when she saw Ningxiu and the others. She didn't expect Ningxiu to participate in the auction. Did she awaken her lifeline? It's him. Ningxiu frowned and pointed at Nye Tian. Urushui's expression froze and she was stunned. So the person who awakened her lifeline was not Ningxiu, but Nye Tian. But wasn't Nye Tian Ningxiu's guard? Was it possible for a guard to awaken his lifeline? Attendant Yu, can we go in now? Ningxiu looked at Urushui and asked. Eldest miss, I'm sorry. That lord only sees bidders and not others. I'll have to trouble you to wait outside. Urushui looked at Ningxiu with a troubled expression. Who the hell is that guy? Why is he so arrogant? Ningxiu was unhappy when she heard that. She couldn't help but shout. Eldest miss, don't shout. Urushui was so scared that cold sweat dripped down his forehead. He quickly waved his hand to signal Ningxiu to be quiet. He knew that the lord in VIP room 9 had an extraordinary identity. Even the Thousand Treasures Chamber of Commerce had to be wary of him. He didn't understand why such a big shot would come to the 7th sacred world of cultivators to auction a sage-level life technique. I'll go in alone. Nye Tian looked at Ningxiu and said calmly but firmly. Ningxiu frowned and could only nod. Nye Tian smiled faintly and strode into VIP room 9. After he entered, he saw a middle-aged man in white sitting upright in the center of the room. His appearance was cold and handsome, and he looked extremely dignified. Beside the middle-aged man stood a young man whose skin was as pale as paper. He looked sickly, as if he was about to wither away. In addition, there were 3 other people on the side: a black-clothed youth, a red-haired martial artist, and a gloomy youth. Apart from Nye Tian, these 3 people were the remaining 3 bidders. At this moment, Nye Tian could not help but frown. He did not see the cultivator in black who wanted to attack Ningxiu. He could not help but feel uneasy. However, Ningxiu was accompanied by Urushui. No matter how arrogant that black-clothed cultivator was, he would not dare to attack her. At this moment, the atmosphere in the room was a little strange. The middle-aged man's gaze moved between Nye Tian and the others strangely. Sometimes he frowned and sometimes he smiled. His expression was rich, but he did not say a word. Sir, the 4 of us are the bidders. After a long time, the red-haired martial artist seemed to be a little impatient. He stepped forward and said, Sir, may I ask, among the 4 of us, who will obtain the sage-level life technique? You probably do not have a chance. The middle-aged man smiled faintly and looked directly at the red-haired martial artist. Why? The red-haired martial artist's gaze trembled, and his expression immediately became gloomy. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said, "Sir, do you know who I am? What's so great about having the divine emperor's bloodline?" The middle-aged man laughed and said, "Your bloodline power is very strong, but it's a pity that your fate isn't good. You're almost 200 years old, but you've only awakened 2 life veins, and you haven't even reached the realm of life patterns. It would be too much of a waste to give you a sacred fate chant." "You." The red-haired martial artist's eyes narrowed, and his expression became extremely gloomy. He was speechless. He did not expect that the middle-aged man could see through him with just a few glances. He had clearly hidden his bloodline power and life veins very well, so how did the middle-aged man find out? Nie Tian frowned and glanced at the red-haired martial artist. The latter had awakened 2 life veins, which was similar to Prince Fei Tian. However, the red-haired martial artist was younger, not even 200 years old. "So you are from the Divine Emperor clan. No wonder you are so arrogant." At this moment, the gloomy young man glanced at the red-haired man and said coldly, "You are not bad yourself." As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man smiled again and said, "You are a dragon martial artist, and you have the bloodline of a black dragon. You have already awakened 3 life veins, so you are much stronger than the red-haired martial artist." The gloomy young man's gaze froze, then he laughed and bowed. "Thank you for your compliment, sir. I am not complimenting you. I am just speaking the truth." The middle-aged man smiled faintly with a calm expression. Nie Tian glanced at the gloomy young man. So the latter was a dragon martial artist. He had seen a dragon martial artist before. The Myriad Domains Guild's president, Zhaojue, was a dragon martial artist. However, the bloodline power of this gloomy young man seemed to be much stronger than Zhaojue. Moreover, the gloomy young man had awakened 3 life veins, which meant that his martial path fate was also very strong. "Alright, let's talk about you." Then, the middle-aged man looked at the black-clothed young man and asked, "You are from the Myriad Treasures Guild. Who is Ning Jinqi to you?" "My name is Ning Zifeng. The name that Sir mentioned is my grandfather." Ning Zifeng bowed slightly, neither servile nor overbearing, and was very polite. "So you are Ning Jinqi's grandson. No wonder your bloodline power is so strong." The middle-aged man laughed and said faintly, "Ning Zifeng, you are not even 100 years old, but you have already reached the heavenly charm realm. Moreover, you have awakened 3 life veins in your body, and your fate cultivation has even reached the life pattern realm. Looks like elder brother Ning Jinqi has a pretty good grandson. You flatter me." Ning Zifeng nodded slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his face. When the red-haired martial artist with the divine phoenix bloodline and the gloomy young man with the black dragon bloodline heard the middle-aged man's words, their expressions changed, and they looked at Ning Zifeng in shock. They did not expect the latter's talent to be so strong. 3 life veins and reaching the life pattern realm. He was indeed a genius. It seemed like the saint-level life formula was Ning Zifeng's. But unfortunately, the fate of the 3 of you is still lacking compared to my disciple. However, at this time, the middle-aged man suddenly looked at the pale young man beside him and said, "My disciple has awakened 6 life veins." 6 life veins. Ning Zifeng and the other 2 exclaimed at the same time. Then, their expressions froze, and they could not speak for a long time. They never expected that the pale young man with an ordinary appearance had awakened 6 life veins. A martial artist with 6 life veins was too scary. However, since this pale young man was the middle-aged man's disciple, and he had awakened 6 life veins, why did the middle-aged man not let the pale young man cultivate the saint-level life formula, but auction it instead? Even my disciple is not qualified to cultivate this advanced saint-level life formula. Do you think you are qualified? At this time, the middle-aged man glanced at Ning Zifeng and the other 2 and smiled faintly. Ning Zifeng and the other 2 had ugly expressions, and they were speechless. Chapter 3477. Another condition. Ye Tian took a step forward with a faint smile and looked at the middle-aged man calmly. At this moment, Ning Zifeng and the other two looked at Nye Tian at the same time, their eyes filled with disdain. You! Ever since the four of them entered the room, the middle-aged man only commented on the three of them and did not even look at Nye Tian. This made Ning Zifeng and the others feel that Nye Tian was not worthy of the middle-aged man's attention. But now, Nye Tian stood out of his own accord. Wasn't he looking for humiliation? Moreover, the middle-aged man already said that his disciple had awakened 6 lifeline meridians, but was not qualified to cultivate the life skill. Could it be that Nye Tian had awakened more than 6 lifeline meridians? If Nye Tian had awakened more than 6 lifeline meridians, Ning Zifeng and the others would definitely not believe it. To them, it was already very good for Nye Tian to be able to awaken 1 lifeline. Nye Tian ignored the three of them and looked at the middle-aged man calmly, waiting for him to speak. At this moment, the middle-aged man looked at Ning Zifeng and the others and said in a deep voice, "You three, please leave first." Ning Zifeng was stunned and asked, "Why? The deal between us is over. I will not sell the holy class life skill to you. What's the point of you staying here?" The middle-aged man's face darkened. His eyes were murderous and surged with a cold glint. Ning Zifeng and the other two could not help but shudder when they felt the murderous pressure. They were horrified. Only then did the three of them realize that the middle-aged man sitting in front of them was a very frightening expert. Although the three of them were unwilling, they did not dare to disobey the middle-aged man. They could only look at Nye Tian and leave. They felt strange. Why did the middle-aged man have to send them away before he was willing to speak to Nye Tian? Could it be that he was really going to sell the life skill to Nye Tian? "Ah Fei, how many lifeline did you see on him?" The middle-aged man asked the pale-faced youth after he was sure that Ning Zifeng and the others had left. "I can't tell." The youth named Hoodlum frowned and looked at Nye Tian with a strange expression as he shook his head. "Even you can't tell. Looks like he has at least 6 lifelines." The middle-aged man's eyes slightly narrowed and flashed with an unconcealable heat. He murmured, "I just don't know if he has met my requirements." When Nye Tian heard the conversation between the master and disciple, he couldn't help but frown. Only then did he realize that the middle-aged man didn't sense how many life veins he had. "Young man, what's your name?" The middle-aged man looked at Nye Tian and asked. "Junior Nye Tian." Nye Tian agreed, bowed slightly, and asked in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "May I know how to address you, sir?" "My surname is Lung. You can call me Mr. Lung." The middle-aged man smiled faintly, then he frowned and said, "Nye Tian, the space of your lifeline is the strangest one I've ever seen. Not only is the space of your lifeline larger than an ordinary martial artist's, but the aura of your lifeline is also stronger. This means that your destiny and lifeline are much stronger than others. But your lifeline is very vague. I can't sense how many there are." 9. As soon as Mr. Ling finished his sentence, Nye Tian and Hoodlum's voices were heard almost at the same time. Nye Tian was stunned and looked at Hoodlum with a trembling gaze. He didn't expect Hoodlum to sense his lifeline. Hoodlum's pupils contracted and his pale face was stunned. He was shocked that Nye Tian really had 9 lifelines. He had only vaguely sensed the existence of the 9 auras and made a guess. He was shocked that he had guessed correctly. Nye Tian was a person with 9 lifelines. 9 lifelines. How is that possible? There really is a martial artist with 9 lifelines in this world. 9 lifelines. In the next second, Mr. Ling heard Nye Tian and Hoodlum's words. His eyes trembled and he was stunned speechless for a long time. "Nye Tian, you have 9 life meridians?" Mr. Ling finally came to his senses. His eyes were burning with desire as he stared at Nye Tian. Nye Tian nodded. He then moved his divine sense, and the 9 lifelines in his lifeline space spread out, releasing a strong destiny aura. This In an instant, Mr. Lung and Hoodlum could clearly sense the aura of the 9 life veins. The master and disciples' eyes trembled, and they gasped in shock. At this moment, they no longer had any doubts about the fact that Nye Tian had 9 life veins. Mr. Ling, can I get the life skill now? Nye Tian kept the aura of his lifelines and asked with a smile. His life meridian was a little strange. Usually, it would have 9 life meridians overlapping together, looking like a single life meridian. Only when Nye Tian purposely released it would the 9 lifelines spread out. Nye Tian, your lifeline is the most powerful one I've ever seen in my life. After a while, Mr. Ling calmed down and looked at Nye Tian. In terms of lifelines, you've met my requirements. However, if you want to get the life skill, you have to agree to another condition. Nye Tian looked at Mr. Ling and his face darkened. He initially thought that he could get the holy ranked life skill after gaining Mr. Ling's approval. He did not expect Mr. Ling to have other conditions. Nye Tian, the life skill doesn't belong to me. It belongs to my sect. Mr. Ling said, therefore, if you want to get the life skill, you have to join my sect. Join your sect? Nye Tian frowned, his expression extremely unsightly. He did not expect Mr. Ling's condition to be so harsh. Along the way, he rarely joined any sects because he didn't want to be restricted. Mr. Ling's condition was what annoyed him the most. I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Without hesitation, Nye Tian rejected and left. Wait! Mr. Ling did not expect Nye Tian to reject him so quickly. He panicked and called out to Nye Tian, Nye Tian, don't you want to know which sect I'm in? Not interested. Nye Tianling replied coldly without turning his head. Feng Tian Fate Sect. Mr. Ling's eyes trembled, and he became even more anxious. Nye Tian, wait. Hearing these words, the Ghost Emperor's voice suddenly sounded out. His eyes trembled and gave off a scorching light. Nye Tian stopped in his tracks when he heard the Ghost Emperor's voice. Seeing that Nye Tian suddenly stopped, Mr. Ling couldn't help but frown. His face darkened, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. Chapter 3478. Feng Tian Ming School, Nye Tian, you've heard of the Feng Tian Fate Sect? Mr. Ling frowned when he saw Nye Tian stop. Yes. Nye Tian turned around and looked at Mr. Ling. He nodded slightly and said, it's said that the earliest dominant organization to appear in the All-Heaven Saints world was the Feng Tian sect. Rumor has it that the warriors of the Feng Tian sect only cultivate 2 types of bloodline powers, martial path fate and heavenly path soul fate. The cultivators of the Feng Tian sect are all very powerful. At their peak, the power of the entire sect once spread to half of the saints' world. But later, the Feng Tian sect broke out in internal strife, causing the sect's strength to be greatly weakened. From then on, it was unable to recover and gradually withdrew from the public's sight. The Feng Tian Fate sect that Mr. Ling mentioned should be a branch of the Feng Tian sect. After that, Nye Tian looked at Mr. Ling with a burning gaze, while the latter's face was gloomy. Mr. Ling didn't expect Nye Tian to know so much about the Feng Tian sect and the Feng Tian Fate sect. Of course, this was all said by the Ghost Emperor. Nye Tian was merely repeating it. Nye Tian was also very surprised. It turned out that the Feng Tian sect was actually so powerful that it had once ruled over the sacred heavens world. At that time, the Feng Tian sect would undoubtedly be equivalent to the Heavenly Tao Sacred Pavilion. Nye Tian, you do know a lot of things. However, there are still many things that you do not know. A while later, Mr. Ling sighed. The Feng Tian Fate sect is indeed related to the Feng Tian sect. You could say that it's a branch of the Feng Tian sect. However, the internal strife of the Feng Tian sect back then was not as simple as you said. Yes. Nye Tian nodded. How could a sect that once ruled over the all-heavens sacred world have an internal conflict? Mr. Ling, do you want me to join your sect? Nye Tian asked. Yes. Mr. Ling nodded heavily as a strange look flashed across his eyes. After a long hesitation, he finally said, "Nye Tian, the life incantation in my hand isn't a premium saint-grade life incantation at all. Not a high-level saint level?" Nye Tian was stunned for a moment, and his face darkened. Advanced Sage was the highest level of life skill. If Mr. Ling's life skill wasn't Advanced Sage, wouldn't it be lower than this level? "The life skill in my hand is a Transcendent Sage level life skill." Mr. Ling looked at Nye Tian and said in a deep voice. Nye Tian's eyes darkened and he was stunned. Were there any Transcendent Saint rank life tactics in this world? "The fate chant in my hand is called the Fengtian fate chant. It is the Fengtian sect's fate chant." Mr. Ling's expression turned serious as he said, "The Fengtian fate chant was obtained by the founder of the Fengtian sect, the first Beacon Emperor in the Ghost Land, the first forbidden area of the All-Heaven Sacred World. Back then, the Fengtian sect was able to rise because of the first Beacon Emperor. The reason why the first Beacon Emperor was so powerful was because of the Fengtian fate chant. In fact, the entire All-Heaven Sacred World only realized how powerful the Martial Path fate chant was after the first Beacon Emperor. It can be said that the first Beacon Emperor was the first person in the All-Heaven Sacred World to cultivate the Martial Path fate chant." Mr. Ling paused for a moment and fell silent. Meanwhile, Nye Tian's eyes were trembling, and he was extremely shocked. Although they had only exchanged a few words, Nye Tian could feel how heroic the first Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian sect was. He ruled the entire All-Heaven Sacred World with his own strength. Such a great achievement could be said to be world-shattering. Later on, the first Beacon Emperor was harmed by a scoundrel, and his life was in danger. Mr. Lung continued, "Before he died, the first Beacon Emperor engraved the incantations of the Fengtian fate chant and left behind a message that the person who could fuse the Fengtian fate chant would be the next Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian sect. Unfortunately, none of the countless martial geniuses in the Fengtian sect were able to fuse the Fengtian fate chant. As a result, the Fengtian sect did not have a Beacon Emperor for a very long time. This was also the beginning of the internal strife in the Fengtian sect. Later on, because no one could fuse the Fengtian fate chant for a very long time, the two sect masters of the Fengtian sect decided to use the Fengtian fate chant as the source to create other fate chants. As a result, many fate chants began to appear, but they were all of a lower level than the Fengtian fate chant. It can be said that almost half of the fate chants in the all-sacred world originated from the Fengtian fate chant. Nye Tian's eyes narrowed when he heard Mr. Ling's words. He was shocked. The first Beacon Emperor was the first person to cultivate the martial destiny. Half of the fate chants in the all-sacred world originated from the Fengtian fate chant. It was evident how powerful the Fengtian sect was back then. Why has no one been able to fuse the Fengtian fate chant? Nye Tian could not help but ask with a frown. The Fengtian fate chant's level is too high. It has a high requirement for the cultivator's fate chants. Mr. Ling's face sank. Back then, the first Beacon Emperor was able to fuse the Fengtian fate chant because he had awakened 9 fate chants in his body. But after him, no one in the Fengtian sect was able to awaken 9 fate chants. So that's how it is. Nye Tian frowned as his expression flickered. He was the same as the first Beacon Emperor, awakening 9 fate chant. Did that mean he could successfully fuse the Fengtian fate chant? Nye Tian, I've searched the entire all-sacred world, but I've never found anyone with 9 fate chant. You're the only one. Mr. Ling's expression turned serious. As long as you join the Fengtian fate sect, I can help you fuse the Fengtian fate chant immediately. As long as you successfully fuse the Fengtian fate chant, you'll be the Beacon Emperor of the Fengtian fate sect. Nye Tian stared at Mr. Ling. His eyes narrowed as his expression sank. The Fengtian fate chant was indeed something good. He really wanted it, but he would have to reconsider if he had to join the Fengtian fate sect or even become the Beacon Emperor. He didn't like being restricted. Once he joined the Fengtian fate sect, he would have a whole new identity, which wasn't a good thing for him. Nye Tian, if you become the Beacon Emperor, everyone in the Feng Tian Fate sect will listen to your orders. What's wrong with that? Mr. Ling frowned as he saw Nye Tian's hesitation. Mr. Ling, I can join the Feng Tian Fate sect, but I have a condition. Nye Tian spoke after some thought. Speak. Mr. Ling's eyes burned with passion. From the look of it, he would agree to Nye Tian's conditions no matter how many times he asked. Mr. Ling, I want to know, what's your identity in the Feng Tian Fate sect? Nye Tian asked with a frown. I'm the sect master of the Feng Tian Fate sect. Mr. Ling was startled. Sect master? Nye Tian's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. The Feng Tian Fate sect was different from the other sections. They had the Beacon Emperor and the sect master. The Beacon Emperor is the true ruler of the Feng Tian Fate sect. The sect master is only someone who manages the sect for the Beacon Emperor. Mr. Ling looked at Nye Tian. He thought that the latter was wondering who had a higher status between the Beacon Emperor and the sect master. Chapter 3479. The new Beacon Emperor. Mr. Ling stared at Nye Tian for a second, but he quickly reacted and nodded. He finally understood that Nye Tian was worried about the Feng Tian Fate sect taking up his time. The Feng Tian Fate sect was a special sect. The Beacon Emperor usually didn't care about the sect's affairs and left everything to the sect leader. As for Nye Tian, even if he became the Beacon Emperor, he still needed a long time to grow. During this time, he wouldn't be able to help the Feng Tian Fate sect even if something were to happen. Mr. Ling, do you understand what I'm saying? Seeing that Mr. Ling had agreed to his condition, Nye Tian couldn't help but frown and say, I'm saying that before I become a paragon saint, I won't help the Wind Heaven Fate sect no matter what. Understood. Mr. Ling chuckled. Don't worry, if you really become the Beacon King, the Feng Tian Fate School will be your strongest shield and will not implicate you at all. Nye Tian frowned and nodded with a puzzled look on his face. It was hard to believe that Mr. Ling would agree to such a harsh condition. Then what was the use of being the Beacon Emperor? He was just a decoration. Nye Tian, let's start fusing with the Heavenly Beacon Fate incantation now. Mr. Ling said excitedly as he couldn't wait any longer. Now? Nye Tian didn't expect Mr. Ling to be in such a hurry. Don't worry, it won't take too long to fuse with the Feng Tian Fate art. It will take at most a few minutes. If you can't fuse with the Feng Tian Fate art, it means that your fate and lifeline aren't strong enough, Mr. Ling said excitedly as he nodded. Won't there be any strange phenomenon when the Feng Tian Fate art is merged? Nye Tian frowned and asked uneasily. I don't know either. You'll find out after you successfully merge the Feng Tian Fate art. Mr. Ling smiled and an ancient scroll appeared in his hand. It was the Feng Tian Fate art. Nye Tian's eyes flickered as he stared at the Heavenly Fate incantation scroll. The Fate Technique scroll that he sensed at this moment was actually much more powerful than the scroll that Yu Rushui had taken out on the auction stage. The scroll that Attendant Yu took out was only a Saint-tier high-tier Fate art created according to the Heaven's Beacon Fate art. The scroll in my hand is the real Heaven's Beacon Fate art scroll. Mr. Ling saw Nye Tian's doubt and smiled. Nye Tian narrowed his eyes and immediately understood. The Heaven's Beacon Fate art was the sect's defining treasure. Of course, they wouldn't casually give it to others. Mr. Ling only gave Yu Rushui a Fate art derived from the Feng Tian Fate art. However, this was enough. A superior Sage Fate art was enough to attract martial Dao Fate geniuses. Nye Tian, are you ready? Mr. Ling's face suddenly became serious as he asked in a deep voice. Nye Tian took a deep breath and nodded slightly. Unbelievable, Mr. Ling actually wanted to fuse the life skill for him in the auction house. Ah Fei. Mr. Ling nodded and called out to Ah Fei who was behind him. The latter understood and immediately walked out. When fusing the life skill, one had to be fully focused and could not be disturbed. Then, Mr. Ling waved his hand and a powerful barrier appeared, instantly enveloping the entire room. Nie Tian's eyes flickered involuntarily as he examined the ward around him. He was incomparably shocked. He had never seen such a terrifying barrier before. Mr. Ling's strength was truly unfathomable. Nie Tian, calm down and get ready to receive the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art. At this moment, Mr. Ling said in a deep voice with a sacred and solemn tone. Nie Tian took a deep breath and sat with his legs crossed. He focused on the space in his life meridian. Boom! Mr. Ling nodded slightly and slowly opened the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art scroll in his hand. Suddenly, a powerful force of the life skill was released, causing the surrounding air to tremble. The entire room was filled with a terrifying force of the life skill. Nie Tian, feel the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art carefully. Fuse the force of the life skill with your life meridian. Mr. Ling said in a deep voice as he forcefully activated the life skill around Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian felt that his entire body was enveloped by the powerful force of the life skill. It was so oppressive that he felt like he was suffocating. This terrifying power was boundless and boundless, as if it existed in the entire world. Nie Tian tried to absorb the force of the life skill. However, the powerful force seemed to reject his body. No matter how hard he tried, he could not absorb any of it. Nie Tian's expression changed and he was shocked. With his talent, could he not fuse the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art? Mr. Ling also noticed this. He took a deep breath and his face darkened. He had tried to fuse the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art with Ah Fei. Although the latter did not succeed, it did not reject the life skill like Nie Tian. Nie Tian had awakened 9 life meridians. It should be more compatible with the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art. Why was it rejecting the life skill? Mr. Ling did not give up. Instead, he activated the life skill even more violently, trying to force Nie Tian to fuse with it. However, the life skill could not enter Nie Tian's body. Instead, it rejected Nie Tian more and more. What's going on? Mr. Ling was shocked. He did not expect this to happen. It seemed that the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art was afraid of Nie Tian. To be more precise, it was afraid of a certain force in Nie Tian's body. Nie Tian, think of a way to hide your godly demon power. Ghost Emperor's voice was suddenly heard, reminding Nie Tian. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed. He reacted immediately and the godly demon power in his body exploded. Instantly, the life skill art moved further away from him. Then, Nie Tian injected all the godly demon power into the Saint Spirit Blood Seal and stored it there temporarily. At this moment, the life skill art calmed down and moved closer to Nie Tian. Indeed, the life skill art was afraid of Nie Tian. It was afraid of the godly demon power in his body. After the godly demon power was hidden, the life skill art immediately entered Nie Tian's body. It's starting to fuse. Mr. Ling could feel the life skill art quickly entering Nie Tian's body. His eyes lit up and he was pleasantly surprised. Then, the life skill art flowed into Nie Tian's life meridian like a river bursting through a dam. It quickly merged with Nie Tian's 9 life meridians. In the blink of an eye, all the life skill art had completely merged with the 9 life meridians as if they were one. At this moment, Nie Tian could feel that his 9 life meridians had become much stronger in an instant. The life skill art has successfully merged. Mr. Ling's eyes widened when he saw all the life skill art disappear. Nie Tian had successfully merged with the Heaven's Beacon Fate Art and became the Beacon Emperor of the Heaven's Beacon Fate sect. Chapter 3480. The Mark of the Beacon Emperor in VIP Room 9. Mr. Ling looked at Nie Tian with trembling eyes. He was extremely shocked. After the fall of the first Beacon King, no one was able to fuse with the Beacon Heaven Fate Law. Thus, the Beacon Heaven Fate School never had a Beacon King, only a sect master. Now, Nie Tian had become the new Beacon Emperor, the second Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tian Fate sect. After countless years without a Beacon Emperor, the Fengtian Fate sect finally had a new beacon emperor. How could Ling Shuangwuchen not be excited? Ling Shuangwuchen was Mr. Ling's name. From today onwards, the Fengtian Fate sect has a beacon emperor. At this moment, his eyes were filled with tears. He was obviously extremely excited. Boom! At this moment, a strange wave was suddenly released from Nie Tian's body. It turned into a strange force in the void. The sudden scene gave Ling Shuangwuchen no time to react. His body shook and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately after, the strange wave passed through the boundary Ling Shuangwuchen set up and spread in all directions. Outside the VIP room, Ning Zifeng and the others did not leave. Instead, they waited anxiously. Although they had no fate with the Fengtian Fate technique, they wanted to know why Ling Shuangwuchen left Nie Tian alone. However, at this moment, Hoodlum, Ning Zifeng, and the others suddenly felt their lifelines tremble inexplicably. It was as if they sensed something terrifying. In the next moment, their expressions changed and they spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, all the martial artists in the sacred world of seventh cultivators and even the entire sacred world, who had awakened their lifelines, also felt their lifelines tremble and spat out blood. Many martial artists with lifelines who were in the midst of battle immediately stopped fighting after being affected by the trembling of their lifelines. The eyes of countless martial artists with lifelines trembled. They did not know what was happening. At that moment, Nie Tian stood up slowly in VIP room number 9 on the 7th floor of Myriad Treasure Mall's auction house. At this moment, his aura was incomparably sharp. His aura was sharper than before, giving off a piercing feeling. Mr. Ling, what's wrong? Nie Tian did not know what had happened. He suddenly saw Ling Shuangwuchen spitting out blood with a pale face. He immediately stepped forward and asked, "Beacon Emperor, I'm fine." Ling Shuangwuchen took a deep breath. Although there was blood at the corner of his mouth, his face was full of excitement. He bowed deeply to Nie Tian with great respect. Of course, he knew that the pulse just now was released after Nie Tian successfully merged with the Fengtian Fate art. The ripple from the life meridian was too strong, it exceeded his expectations. Even he spat out a mouthful of blood after being hit by the life meridian. However, the martial artists who had not awakened their life meridians did not sense the ripple at all. Mr. Ling, before I officially take over the Fengtian Fate sect, you should call me Nie Tian. Nie Tian looked at Ling Shuangwuchen and said with a faint smile, "All right." Ling Shuangwuchen thought for a while and nodded. Although the Fengtian Fate sect had a new beacon emperor, it was better not to let this matter spread before Nie Tian grew stronger. What Nie Tian needed the most right now was to grow his strength. Nie Tian, although you don't care about the Fengtian Fate sect now, you're still the beacon emperor of the Fengtian Fate sect. At this moment, Ling Shuangwuchen took out a black seal and said, "This is the Fengtian Fate sect's beacon emperor jade seal. It represents the beacon emperor's supreme status. I'll give it to you for safekeeping." Nie Tian thought for a while and nodded slightly. He then took the beacon emperor jade seal. "Nie Tian, there's a mark of the beacon emperor in the beacon emperor jade seal. Check it out," Ling Shuangwuchen said to Nie Tian. Nie Tian frowned and probed the beacon emperor jade seal with his spirit sense. As expected, he sensed a powerful spirit sense mark. He then looked at Ling Shuangwuchen and realized that there was a strange black mark on the latter's forehead. "Nie Tian, do you see the beacon emperor's mark on my forehead now?" Ling Shuangwuchen looked at Nie Tian and asked with a faint smile. "Yes." Nie Tian nodded. It turned out that the mark on Ling Shuangwuchen's forehead was the beacon emperor's mark. The Fengtian Fate sect now has 2 suzerains, 4 banner leaders, and 8 protectors. They are known as the 2 sects, 4 banners, and 8 protectors. Ling Shuangwuchen smiled and said, "These people's spirit sense marks have been recorded in the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal. They all have the Beacon Emperor's mark on their foreheads." You're now the owner of the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal. You can see the Beacon Emperor's mark directly. So, when you see the 2 sects, 4 banners, and 8 protectors in the future, you can easily recognize them. As long as you take out the Beacon Emperor Jade Seal, they won't dare to disobey. Thank you. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He understood that Ling Shuang Wuchen was protecting him in disguise. He might encounter the 2 sects, 4 banners, and 8 protectors in the future, and then he could ask them for help. Although the Feng Tian Fate sect had declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. No matter how weak the 2 sects, 4 banners, and 8 protectors were, at least, Supreme Saint. Ling Shuang Wuchen looked at Nie Tian and asked, Nie Tian, you want to travel alone, right? Yes. Nie Tian nodded and said, Don't worry, Mr. Ling. Since I'm already the Beacon Emperor of the Feng Tian Fate sect, I will naturally fulfill the responsibilities of a Beacon Emperor when I have the strength. Ling Shuang Wuchen nodded and did not say anything else. Then, the 2 of them walked out of the VIP lounge. Master, are you all right? Hoodlum had been waiting anxiously. When he saw Ling Shuang Wuchen coming out, his face turned pale and he could not help but ask nervously. I'm fine. Ling Shuang Wuchen smiled and asked, Hoodlum, did you feel the movement of the lifeline just now? Yes. Hoodlum nodded and looked strangely at Nie Tian. His eyes trembled violently and he was obviously very surprised, but he did not say anything. At this moment, Ning Zifeng took a step forward and looked at Ling Shuang Wuchen with a gloomy face. He asked coldly, Sir, what was that movement of the lifeline just now? Do I need to tell you? Ling Shuang Wuchen frowned and replied coldly. You fused the advanced saint-level life technique? Ning Zifeng frowned and looked at Nie Tian with killing intent in his eyes. So what if I fused it? So what if I didn't fuse it? What does it have to do with you? Nie Tian's eyes darkened and he replied coldly. How dare you, slave? You're just a guard of 19th sister, a slave. What right do you have to speak to me like this? Ning Zifeng's face darkened and he suddenly shouted. Nie Tian frowned and was stunned. 5th brother, Nie Tian is my guard, not my servant, Ning Ziyu said indignantly as she looked at Ning Zifeng from the side. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed and his expression changed slightly. He then realized that Ning Zifeng was Ning Ziyu's 5th brother. How dare you? Ning Zifeng roared and suddenly turned to look at Ning Ziyu. He said in a deep voice, He's your guard, so he's the Ning family's slave. Nie Tian looked at Ning Zifeng and his face darkened. He actually felt the killing intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes. Chapter 3481. Don't mess with me. Nie Tian could see the intense murderous intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes. His heart could not help but tremble, and he instantly understood. Ning Ziyu's flying mount had lost control because someone had set up a curse. The person who had the opportunity to set up a curse was definitely someone close to Ning Ziyu. Nie Tian had once suspected that Yu Rushui was the one who wanted to harm Ning Ziyu. However, Yu Rushui was too slick, and her status wasn't high enough. There was no reason for her to harm Ning Ziyu. Now that he saw Ning Zifeng's murderous intent, he instantly understood that the person who wanted to harm Ning Ziyu was Ning Zifeng. Ning Zifeng and Ning Ziyu were siblings, related by blood. However, in many large aristocratic families, this kind of bloodline relationship would seem very faint. Sometimes, in order to fight for resources or inheritance rights, even brothers would kill each other. Ning Zifeng, on the other hand, looked refined and courteous on the surface, but he was actually sinister and ruthless. Before he obtained the saint-level life skill, he was very respectful to Ling Shuang Wuchen. However, his attitude was completely different now. At this moment, the look in his eyes when he was teaching Ning Ziyu a lesson was more murderous than angry. At that moment, Ling Shuang Wuchen looked at Ning Zifeng without saying anything. He wanted to see how Nie Tian would handle the current situation. Nie Tian's talents were great, but as the Beacon Sky King, his temperament was equally important. Brat, did you really integrate a saint-level life skill? Ning Zifeng looked at Nie Tian and asked in a deep voice. I've fused with it. What do you want? Nie Tian replied calmly. You really fused with it? Ning Zifeng's eyes were filled with shock and anger. His expression was clearly saying, what right do you have to fuse with a life formula that even I, Ning Zifeng, am not qualified to do so? Are you angry that I fused with a holy grade life tactic? Nie Tian frowned and said with a hint of provocation in his eyes. Dog slave, is this how you talk to your master? Ning Zifeng's eyes darkened, and his killing intent surged. He roared and looked like a ferocious beast. Fifth brother, Nie Tian is not a slave. Before Nie Tian could speak, Ning Ziyu shouted from the side. She was obviously very angry. Shut up! Ning Zifeng's pupils suddenly contracted. He suddenly turned around, raised his hand, and slapped him. Ning Ziyu's eyes trembled as she screamed in fright. But in the next moment, Ning Zifeng's hand stopped in midair. A hand like an iron clamp was gripping his wrist. You! Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled as he looked at Nie Tian in horror. He was obviously very afraid. He hadn't expected that Nie Tian would actually dare to stop him. What was even more unexpected was that the strength in Nie Tian's hand was extremely strong. That hand that was holding onto his wrist seemed to have the strength of 10,000 caddies, making him unable to move at all. What about me? Nie Tian looked at Ning Zifeng with a cold smile. He spoke in a low voice while secretly exerting strength in his hand. Crack, crack, crack. Instantly, the sound of bones breaking was heard. Ning Zifeng's wrist was actually forcefully broken by Nie Tian. Hoodlum's eyes trembled when he saw this. He couldn't help but turn to look at Ling Shuang-Wuchen. The latter's eyes were also filled with shock. Ling Shuang-Wuchen didn't expect Nie Tian to be so domineering and use such a method to deal with Ning Zifeng. Moreover, Nie Tian's martial constitution was also so strong that it was terrifying. Ning Zifeng was a holy disciple at the 3rd grade of the Heavenly Charm realm, but the strength of his martial constitution was obviously far inferior to Nie Tian's. After being restrained by Nie Tian, Ning Zifeng couldn't fight back at all. He was like a piece of meat on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered. You! Ning Zifeng endured the intense pain. His eyes were incomparably fierce. He wanted to resist, but he realized that his strength was no match for Nie Tian's. The more he resisted, the stronger Nie Tian's strength became. Young friend, don't be rash. Yu Rushui, who was at the side, was so frightened that her face turned pale. Ning Zifeng was the owner of this auction. If something happened to him here, as the head warden, he would definitely be in trouble. At this moment, powerful auras appeared in the surrounding void. It was as if they were about to break through the void and attack Nie Tian. These experts were the auction house's secret guards. They were in charge of guarding the auction house and protecting Ning Zifeng. Nie Tian, let go of my 5th brother! At the same time, Ning Ziyu's voice was heard, and she shouted anxiously. It was obvious that she hadn't sensed Ning Zifeng's killing intent towards her. Brat, if you dare to touch me, you won't be able to walk out of this auction house alive. Ning Zifeng's eyes were bloodshot as he said viciously. Don't worry, I won't kill you. Nie Tian's lips curled into a smile. He stared at Ning Zifeng strangely and said, I just want to remind you that I miss Ning Ziyu's guard now. As long as I'm by her side, I won't allow anyone to hurt her. Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled, and his face was filled with shock. How could he not tell that Nie Tian was giving him a warning? Could it be that Nie Tian already knew that he was the one who wanted to kill Ning Ziyu in secret? But how was that possible? He had done it very discreetly. The person who cast the curse on Ning Ziyu's flying steed had already been killed. By right, no one should have known about this. This brat must have made a wild guess. Ning Zifeng forced himself to calm down and thought to himself. Ning Zifeng, it's really you. Nie Tian sneered when he saw Ning Zifeng's reaction. You bastard, You actually wanted to kill your own sister. Just now, Nie Tian wasn't completely sure that Ning Zifeng was the one who wanted to kill Ning Xiu. But now, Ning Zifeng's reaction told him that Ning Zifeng wanted to kill Ning Xiu. He couldn't understand why Ning Zifeng wanted to kill his own sister. Ning Zifeng, I've indeed merged with the saint-level life tactic. If you're not convinced, you can come and find me. Then, Nie Tianling sneered. As he said that, he suddenly exerted force in his hand. With a crack, Ning Zifeng's wrist was broken. Ah! Ning Zifeng couldn't bear the pain and let out a strange cry. His handsome face turned hideous. Unbelievable! Nie Tian actually broke his wrist with just the strength of his hand. Ning Zifeng, breaking your wrist is a warning to you. Nie Tian let go of Ning Zifeng and said plainly, "Don't provoke me. You're asking for death." Ning Zifeng broke free from Nie Tian and was instantly enraged. He roared and shouted, "Where are the dark guards? I'm here." In the next instant, the dark guards of the auction house, who had been hiding in the void for a long time, appeared one after another. Dozens of warriors in black had extremely powerful auras and released a terrifying and oppressive aura. Kill him! Ning Zifeng seemed to have gone mad. He looked at Nie Tian fiercely and roared. Chapter 3482. Impudence! Boom, boom, boom. The violent aura pressed down on Nie Tian like rolling thunder. Boom. Nie Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. He was not afraid at all. He took a step forward and released a terrifying aura to resist the dozens of dark guards. Bang! The next moment the void shook. After a muffled sound, the dozens of dark guards were forced to retreat. On the other hand, Nie Tian was as steady as a mountain and did not move at all. The sudden scene caused everyone's eyes to widen. They were all staring at Nie Tian as if they had seen a ghost. How was it possible that Nie Tian had single-handedly fought off dozens of hidden guards? One had to know that these dozens of hidden guards were all heavenly rhythm powerhouses. However, in the auction hall, all the martial artists were suppressed by the barrier and their strength was below the godly state. Even so, Nie Tian's aura alone forced dozens of dark guards to retreat was still shocking. At this moment, the people in the auction hall looked at Nie Tian and couldn't help but discuss. Who is this kid? How dare he cause trouble at the auction hall of the Million Treasures Merchant Guild? This kid is so young but has the strength of the heavenly rhythm realm. I'm afraid he's also a disciple of an aristocratic family. These young masters of aristocratic families are inexperienced. They probably don't know how powerful the Million Treasures Merchant Guild is. How dare they cause trouble here? These people recognized Ning Zifeng and thought that Nie Tian was the troublemaker. A bunch of trash. What are you waiting for? Kill him! Ning Zifeng recovered from the shock and shouted at Nie Tian while pointing at him. Fifth young master, please calm down. At this moment Yu Rushui came to Ning Zifeng's side and said, "This little friend is Miss 19's guard after all. We are family. What's the point of keeping a servant who disrespects his master?" Ning Zifeng was furious and didn't listen to advice. He only wanted to kill Nie Tian. Nie Tianling laughed and said directly, "Ning Zifeng, I'm afraid I'm not the only person you want to kill." "Brat, what do you mean?" Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled and his expression changed slightly. "I said, the person you want to kill is Miss Ning Xiu." Nie Tian's expression darkened. Without any hesitation, he said coldly. "Nonsense." Ning Zifeng's pupils constricted in shock. Then, he became enraged and roared, "Secret guard, kill this brat!" "Yes!" Dozens of shadow guards roared in unison. Their auras surged and they prepared to attack Nie Tian. Nie Tian wasn't afraid in the slightest. If it was under normal circumstances, these hidden guards might be a threat to him. However, under the boundary of the auction house, these hidden guards were like chickens and dogs. Under the enchantment, the hidden guard's strength was suppressed to heavenly emperor realm, while Nie Tian had the strength of a lesser god. It was not an exaggeration to say that Nie Tian could kill all the dark guards in the blink of an eye. Who dares to make a move? However, at this moment Ling Shuang Wuchen, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke. His calm voice resounded in everyone's ears, but it was like a sudden clap of thunder, causing everyone to tremble. Nie Tian frowned. Ling Shuang Wuchen's voice contained a powerful spiritual martial technique. It was extremely terrifying. Everyone's eyes trembled as they looked at Ling Shuang Wuchen in horror. No one dared to make a sound. Nie Tian, let's go. Ling Shuang Wuchen didn't want to be entangled with such a person. He spoke calmly and prepared to leave. How dare you? However, at this moment, Ning Zifeng roared and shouted, Is the auction house of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce a place where you can come and go as you please? Slap. However, just as he finished speaking, a force pierced through the air and left several clear fingerprints on his face. How dare you? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled. He looked at Ling Shuang Wuchen in disbelief and growled. Slap. However, before he could finish his sentence, the next slap landed on his face. You? Slap. Ning Zifeng was shocked. He wanted to say something, but he was greeted with a third slap. This time, his eyes were filled with extreme shock. He looked at Ling Shuang Wuchen and didn't dare to make a sound. He couldn't believe that Ling Shuang Wuchen actually dared to slap him in front of so many people. He was the owner of this auction house and a direct descendant of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. Ling Shuang Wuchen humiliated him like this, which was equivalent to provoking the entire Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Ling Shuang Wuchen. Their eyes were filled with shock and fear. Who exactly was Ling Shuang Wuchen? How dare he humiliate a descendant of the Ning family of the Million Treasures Chamber of Commerce? Impudent! Ling Shuang Wuchen looked at Ning Zifeng and said calmly, Go back and ask Ning Jinqi if he dares to speak to me like this. Ning Jinqi was Ning Zifeng's grandfather. He had an extremely high status in the entire Ning family. Since Ling Shuang Wuchen dared to say Ning Jinqi's name in front of everyone, it at least meant that his status was not lower than Ning Jinqi's. Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled slightly, and he didn't dare to speak anymore. Brat, listen carefully. Nie Tian is my friend. I was the one who helped him integrate his life skill. If you dare to touch him, even Ning Jinqi won't be able to protect you. Then, Ling Shuang Wuchen continued. Life skill. Everyone's eyes trembled when they heard Ling Shuang Wuchen's words, and they immediately understood. It turned out that Ling Shuang Wuchen was the owner of that saint-level life skill. How could a person who could take out a saint-level life skill have a low status? Ning Zifeng's eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but glance at Nie Tian with a murderous gaze. He didn't expect that Ling Shuang Wuchen not only sold the life skill to Nie Tian, but also personally helped Nie Tian integrate the life skill. Could it be that Nie Tian's lifeline was more powerful than Ning Zifeng's? At this moment, no matter how stupid Ning Zifeng was, he understood that Nie Tian wasn't Ning Ziyu's guard at all. He must have another terrifying identity. Seems like this guy still wants to kill me. Sensing the murderous intent in Ning Zifeng's eyes, Nie Tian's lips twitched, and he smiled bitterly in his heart. Given Ning Zifeng's personality, it was useless even if Ling Shuang Wuchen threatened him. Let's go. Ling Shuang Wuchen looked at Ning Zifeng and frowned. He didn't say anything else and left immediately. Nie Tian looked at Ning Ziyu and left with her. This time, Ning Zifeng didn't say anything. The dozens of dark guards were like wooden stakes, not daring to move. Ning Zifeng's tensed face only relaxed a little when Nie Tian and the rest disappeared. However, his eyes were still releasing a sinister glint, as if he wanted to eat someone. He was determined to get the life skill in Nie Tian's body. Moreover, Nie Tian knew too many things that he shouldn't know, so he had to die. Even though Ling Shuang Wuchen had warned him, he didn't believe that Ling Shuang Wuchen would dare to come to the Myriad Treasure Chamber of Commerce to kill him if he really killed Nie Tian. He felt that Ling Wuchen had only met Nie Tian once, and what Ling Wuchen said just now was just a casual remark. At the same time, outside the auction house, Nie Tian looked at Yu Rushui, who came out to send them off. Chapter 3483. Feng Hun Saint Elixir. Young Master Nie Tian, is something the matter? Yu Rushui couldn't help but feel alarmed when she saw Nie Tian's strange expression. She bowed and asked. He had met countless people in his life, and had long cultivated the ability to socialize smoothly. Previously, he had not paid much attention to Nie Tian, so he had neglected the latter. Of course, he could tell that Nie Tian wasn't just Ning Ziyu's bodyguard. Deacon Yu, I want to ask you about something. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said 4 words, Heart-devouring Blackstone. Heart-devouring Blackstone? Yu Rushui's eyes could not help but tremble when she heard these words. She was quite surprised. Obviously, he knew about the heart-devouring Blackstone. Deacon Yu knows about the heart-devouring Blackstone? Nie Tian's eyes trembled and were burning with passion. Yu Rushui frowned and said in a deep voice, Lord Nie Tian, I've only heard of the heart-devouring Blackstone, but I've never seen it. I only know that it's a token from a certain force. Thank you, Deacon Yu. Nie Tian looked at Yu Rushui and felt that the latter seemed to be hiding something. However, he could not force her, so he simply thanked her. Since Yu Rushui was unwilling to speak, Nie Tian did not probe further and turned to leave. Young Master Nie Tian. Yu Rushui suddenly called out to Nie Tian. What's the matter? Nie Tian turned to look at Yu Rushui and smiled faintly. Wolf's Night Mountain. You might be able to find what you want there. Yu Rushui's mouth twitched as she transmitted a message to Nie Tian. Then, she turned and left. Wolf's Night Mountain. Nie Tian's eyes narrowed as he memorized this place. Then, Nie Tian and the others left the auction house and soon arrived outside the Million Treasure Mall. Mr. Ling, let's bid farewell here. Nie Tian looked at Ling Wuchen and said with a smile. Next, he had to continue searching for the Emperor of the Underworld. As the sect master of the Fengtian Fate sect, Ling Wuchen would definitely not follow him. Moreover, he preferred to travel alone. With Ling Shuang and Wuchen around, he was restricted. Nie Tian, Ning Zifeng will not let you off. You have to be careful from now on. Ling Wuchen looked at Nie Tian, unable to hide the worry in his eyes. Ling Wuchen could tell that Ning Zifeng was a vicious and unscrupulous person. He would definitely not give up on killing Nie Tian just because of a threat. I know. Nie Tian smiled and said, Don't worry, Mr. Ling. Although I'm not an expert, I can still protect myself. Ling Wuchen nodded. He was very confident in Nie Tian. After all, the 7th cultivator of true virtue sacred world was only a primary sacred world, and there weren't many powerhouses there. Even the heavenly mandate sacred masters were rare. With Nie Tian's strength, a mere Ning Zifeng would not be able to do anything to him. At this moment, Ling Wuchen suddenly looked at Duanmulu and the others and asked with a frown, Nie Tian, are these 4 brothers your friends? Nie Tian nodded and forced a smile. Compared to the others, Duanmulu and the others were much weaker. I have 3 Feng Hun Saint pills here. I can give them to these 3 brothers. Ling Wuchen smiled faintly. 4 scarlet saint pills appeared in his hand, and he passed them to Nie Tian. What a powerful aura! Nie Tian could sense an extremely terrifying aura from the 4 saint pills. He could not help but be shocked. Nie Tian, this is a saint pill specially made by the Fenghun sect. As long as a cultivator is an overgod, they can consume it. Within a month, they will definitely be able to break through to the saint realm. Ling Wuchen smiled faintly. Nie Tian frowned when he heard Ling Wuchen's words and asked in confusion. A saint elixir pill was able to elevate an overgod to the saint realm within a month. This was simply too terrifying. Nie Tian was worried that the Fenghun saint pill might have some side effect. To Duanmulu and the others, increasing their strength was important, but it must not affect their martial arts foundation. Nie Tian knew that although some pills could help a cultivator increase their strength in a short period of time, they had to pay the price of draining the cultivator's martial arts talent. Although these pills could increase a cultivator's talent in a short period of time, the cultivator's cultivation speed would be greatly reduced in the future. They might even stagnate. With the talents of Duanmu Lu and the others, it was only a matter of time before they reached the Saint Realm. Their final destination was not just the heavenly charm-hallowed disciple. If the Fenghun Saint pill increased the strength of Duanmu Lu and the others, but harmed their martial arts foundation and martial arts talent, Nie Tian would never let them consume it. Nie Tian, don't worry. The Fenghun Saint pill is a special saint pill of the Fenghun Fate sect. It contains the Fenghun soul of the Fenghun Fate sect's powerhouses. While it can increase a cultivator's cultivation rapidly, it won't harm a cultivator's martial arts foundation at all. Leng Shuang Wuchen could tell what Nie Tian was worried about, so he explained with a faint smile. Mr. Leng, are you sure that the Fenghun Saint pill has no side effects? Nie Tian frowned. He still didn't believe it. There are no side effects, but if these three young brothers consume the Saint pill, they might suffer a little. Leng Shuang Wuchen nodded and said, after consuming the Fenghun Saint elixir, the warrior's internal organs and limbs will be greatly impacted due to its overwhelming power. It's as if they are being burned by fire. Moreover, the weaker the cultivator, the stronger the impact and the longer it lasts. With their strength, once they consume the Fenghun Saint pill, they will suffer for at least half a month, or even longer. Will their lives be in danger? Nie Tian frowned and couldn't help but feel nervous. Leng Shuang Wuchen frowned and said, the impact of the Fenghun Saint pill won't threaten a cultivator's life, but not everyone can endure the continuous pain. If a cultivator's willpower isn't strong enough, they won't be able to endure the continuous torture. In the Fenghun Fate sect, there was once someone who couldn't endure the pain of the Fenghun Saint pill. After consuming the Saint pill, he lost his mind and went crazy. Nie Tian's eyebrows furrowed as his face darkened. It seemed that it was not easy to obtain great power. The Fenghun Saint pill didn't have any side effects, but it carried unbearable pain. Duanmu Lu and the other three were very young. The oldest, Duanmu Lu, was only in his 30s, while the youngest, Pring Xiongfei, was not even 20. Back in the plain world, when Nie Tian met Pring Xiongfei, the latter was only a 7-year-old child. Could the four of them endure the pain of being burned for half a month at such a young age? Nie Tian, you can keep the 4 Fenghun Saint pills for now. When the time is right, let the 4 of them consume them. Leng Shuang Wuchen nodded and said, it's best to let them consume them after their strength has reached the half-saint level. All right. Nie Tian nodded. The Fenghun Saint pill was a good thing, but it was very dangerous. He would use it carefully. Then, Leng Shuang Wuchen left with Hoodlum without delay. Thank you, Mr. Ling, Nie Tian said to himself as he watched Leng Shuang Wuchen's figure disappear.